so at least. Maybe she's
I'm all spread out here.
So who's not coming? Who's not coming? I forgot if he said Ed. Okay, Bill's here. That's good.
Oh, now we're all set.
To meet
Hey,
Bill.
good.
Yeah,
Good job.
I beat you guys today.
Right, so.
I'm just happy beating you like by barely by a minute. Last time I was like
Hi,
actually
Bill. How are you?
Hey there, hey Joey, how are you?
like half an hour late.
Not easy getting here at 5:30.
No, not easy.
Lisa? Lisa, can you hear me?
What, like, is it in Hartford? Where is it?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, we got Mimi, Bill,
Forever.
Chris,
A year ago. We're in the
Punkish,
Park building for 28
and
years.
Jeff,
We moved. We're-
and yourself.
Okay.
That makes 6, so we can get going, and then whenever John
Yeah, I know.
logs
Nice
in.
area. Just a
But you
long
got your
commute.
you got your
A little bit
quorum,
long.
It's
so we can
another
get going. We
Okay.
get most of the departments here.
Okay.
I divide my time. I work from home at least half
All
the
right.
time now anyway. So, like everybody else, I turn my kids.
Good evening, everyone. We're going to get started. I'm on Zoom. I know if you're in the audience, you can just hear me like a voice from outer space, so I apologize.
John, we can't hear.
So if you would please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Ask him if he can turn it on.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, and liberty and justice for all. So we're going to move on to public comment. This portion of the meeting is specifically set aside for comments from the public who are asked to limit their comments to 2 minutes. Any person interested in providing public comment but cannot attend the meeting should email their written comment to publicmeetings@rockyhillct.gov. And I'm looking in my chat box. I don't see that we have anyone from the public. John, do you want to confirm that there's no one at the podium?
So we're at the section of public comment. I take it there's no one that wants to comment, so we can move on to the budget review section.
Wonderful. So beginning with subsection A, senior services, we have 2 sections. We will begin with senior program, which is in your budget books, pages 76 and 77.
Jeff, are you lonely over there? Should we like squeeze in?
Everybody abandoned me.
To make sure it's on.
Okay, Gina has arrived at the table.
I can thank you. I can actually see, I figured out on my screen how to zoom that in.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. My name is Gina Marino. I'm the Senior Services Director. And tonight we'll talk about our senior services budget, the senior program, which is the Senior Center. We opened in October. Everything was brand new. Programs were open to do whatever we thought was right. We started off with a strong volunteer program. Our cafe is where our seniors serve complimentary coffee, and they greet our seniors coming in every day. So it's been a very warm and welcoming place, which is one of the goals that we had initially, and we're continuing with. We also use our volunteers for our lunch program. We started off in October with approximately 250 lunches being served. April is up to over 1,000. So we've been serving a large amount of hot lunches at lunchtime with some special events as well. We opened a fitness center in November, and that's been well attended, and that's also supervised by some staff and volunteers. We also opened a game room very recently, and we have a billiard table and a foosball table in there. We're working on a gift shop That's the next adventure. And that will hopefully be opening sometime in the fall. We did a pop-up event and drew many people and made a little bit of money to help go towards the gift shop. So we're going on and on with things. Our membership right now is at 1,200 seniors, which when we first started, we had about 300. So that we've really grown the program there. Our newsletter, The Compass, was originally 8 pages. We are up to 16 pages now. So that's also grown. The big thing in this budget that's different from last year's is I'm requesting a full-time clerical position to assist me with all the different functions that I need to have done administratively. I spend a good part of my day in the senior center talking with seniors, supervising programs, and I find that I'm spending many hours trying to catch up administratively after senior center hours. So I would really appreciate a full-time person to help assist. We've grown the program significantly, and we continue to grow them. We also have a very strong indoor gym program with pickleball, table tennis, and cornhole. So basically, the programs are member-directed. So if a member is interested in something, we usually pursue it, and that's how we're growing our programs. And many of them are volunteer-led or facilitated. Does anybody have any questions for me?
Gina, I have a question. Of the 1,200 members, how many of those are local? And how many of those are out of town?
Just over 1,000 are from Rocky Hill, and about 197 are from out of town.
Thank you.
We did raise, initially the non-resident rate was $10 to join. It is now $20. So non-residents are paying $20 a year. Rocky Hill residents are complimentary.
You had, go ahead, Bill.
Yeah, just a question. So when you say member, what exactly does that mean? Enrolled in one of the programs, or what exactly?
There's an application that they fill out, and they get put into our database so that we're able to email people and keep track of who's coming in and out of the center.
Okay. And membership, what does that entitle them to?
Participation in all the programs, a copy of the Compass, discounted rates on our programs that we currently offer.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
There's a different rate for lunch too as well, correct?
Right, so right now lunch is $4 if you're a member and $10 if you're a non-member. Because we do have guests that will come in occasionally, caregivers, that kind of thing.
Okay. Thank you.
Do you have anything?
No, go ahead.
Hey, Gina, a couple questions. Just to go through some of these line items. So office supplies was not in the budget last year. It looks like you used a little bit. It's up to 1,000. Is that based on anything in particular? Or?
I've been robbing Parks and Recreation since I've got.
Where's Craig?
Yeah, they've been supporting my.
He's here, right?
Yeah, my envelopes, my everything. They've been supporting everything. Even clerically, they've been helping. I couldn't have gotten where we've gotten without the staff, Parks and Recreation staff. So yes, I didn't have line items at all. If you look at the account, there was very few line items that had money in them. Training, that kind of thing. So yes, we will definitely be using that. I'm sure Craig's budget is probably minus 1,000 from having me in the office.
Gotcha. Okay. The senior activity line, it's requesting the same amount as last year, but the projected showing 15.5. So, is there something that makes you think you'll hit that number this time? Or?
Oh, definitely, because we haven't had a full year. We didn't start planning until October,
Okay.
so that's several months of no activities.
Okay. Gotcha. Okay. I think that's it.
Can it, the service contracts. Can you talk a little bit about what are those about? Because that's about a 50% increase, I guess.
That's actually a decrease.
That's a decrease.
Okay.
It's a
where is it
decrease.
go? Okay, sorry. Sorry about that.
Okay.
Okay, so actually the next one is the food. As we know, the prices have been going up, and I think you have budgeted 75, which is the same as the last year. So do you see, how do you estimate that cost, and do you have to mitigate that cost going forward as all your, costs are going up? Essentially, that's what I'm asking.
Yes. We raised the fee of the lunch by 50 cents. So it was $3.50, so now we're collecting $4. We also have started a donation program. So we received a few $100s in donations towards the lunch program. And that's also for seniors who can't afford it. So if somebody comes and they don't have money for lunch, we never turn anyone away. So they would be allowed to come for that. I've also been looking at sponsorships. So it will not cost you or us more than that money that's budgeted there. If anything, my goal is to try to bring that down if possible.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, that's it, man.
Any other questions?
Yeah, just in looking at the full-time salary and the part-time salary line, it looks like the part-time salary is, the projected is going down. Is that with the anticipation that if you hire a full-time clerical person, that it would offset some of what we've been filling in for part-time?
Yes.
And then I think it's great that our membership is increasing. Do we know what the count is of eligible seniors in town and how well we're doing capturing people who can't come in? I think you said there's 1,000 folks in town. Do you know what our population of eligible seniors is?
I want to take a guess of 7,000, but I'm not sure. Does anyone know that? No.
Because one of the things that I think we're all learning about during the pandemic is that people are getting more isolated. And I'm not sure if this might even be something where you'd work with human services. I'm not sure exactly how that would work. But it's good that the number's going up. But there are folks who, especially now that we're opening up, it's a little more safe. I don't know if it would be something where we could target them with, call it marketing or some sort of outreach to help make people feel they're part of the community. And if that's something that you're working on, that type of outreach to folks who might be at home and a little nervous about coming out, or maybe they just are stuck in a place where they don't feel that they can leave. That would be something where I think would be very beneficial to some of our seniors who are in town, but maybe not as much of a part of the community as they were, 2 or 3 years ago. So I don't know if you had any thoughts about that, or how we might be able to put some sort of program like that in to increase that engagement.
We definitely can. There's always improvement in that area. We have been doing some Zoom and hybrid programs for people that can't get out. And our transportation program tends to hit the people that are a little more isolated. So when we get to that portion, our numbers have gone up a bit. So yes, that's a good goal to work towards, to bring more people into the facility or bring services to the people that can't get there.
And another question I'm just going to ask you about, because someone asked me, I didn't know. For the programs at the fitness center or some of the exercise programs, is there an insurance offset, or is that all out of pocket? Do you know if there's a way for folks who have insurance to get those covered, or do they go and pay per class? I'm sure it's a big question, a lot of paperwork, but I didn't know the answer. Someone asked me.
Yeah,
The answer is no.
Yeah.
No, there isn't. That's not that. No.
Okay.
There isn't any offset.
That's a good answer. And then lastly, you mentioned programs are member-directed, volunteer-led. If there are folks from the community who are interested in teaching a program, it could be anything.
Send me an email.
Send you an
Definitely,
email.
or give me a call. That's our best programs are volunteers from the community that are looking to do something, give back, and share their expertise.
Perfect. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I just have one question. Support services, the $4,000 for the new newsletter and everything, I don't see it down below in the budget area. Where would that be?
Is that service contracts?
Was that part of the
Service contract.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Why don't we we move on to subsection 2, minibus transportation on pages 72 and 73.
This budget pretty much stayed flat. The only big increase is fuel. That's been added to the budget that wasn't there before. We have 2 full-time drivers and a per diem driver, and they are busy all the time. With the activity at the community center increasing, we've seen more rides coming to the community center than we've have in the past. We are actually on par for rides to be a little greater than pre-pandemic numbers. So our numbers are increasing. From July 1 to today, we had an increase of 64 new riders, which is a nice amount. We have been able to do adventures in dining, and we've been focusing on going to different ethnic restaurants. They're going to Greek this month. So that's been very popular. And we've also not excluded people that depend on the transportation. It's geared toward people who need the transportation to get out, but we've also been able to let people drive on their own and share with their friends and make it a very social, nice evening for people.
Okay, are there any questions?
No.
Does the minibus pick up people out of town or just in
No,
town?
you need to be a resident in Rocky Hill, and the service is free, which is phenomenal. A lot of towns charge for that service, so we're very fortunate.
I had a quick question. So all the minibus activity, these are town-owned buses or buses the state gives us and run by town employees? None of it's privatized. It's all done within
Correct.
our employees and our
Yep.
equipment. Okay, thanks.
And our drivers are fantastic.
So just circling back to that question about whether they're out of town. So does it take people who are Rocky Hill residents out of, say, a doctor's appointment,
Yes,
Hartford, that sort of thing?
it'll go out of town, Hartford, Weathersfield, Farmington, and then we also have a curtain transportation, which will take people even farther out. It's a grant program that we were able to get, Tri-Town.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
So Gina, when I looked up the census, a little more than 30% of our population is in that like 55 to 80 plus age group.
So what's our population, 22?
About
Yeah,
21,000.
21.
So 7,000 was right on, huh?
7,000.
Good.
Yeah.
Buy a lottery
I just
ticket
turned
tonight.
55.
That's what I kind of thought it was 7, but I wasn't sure.
7,001.
Well, thank you very
Yeah,
much for the
I just turned 55,
presentation.
so I guess I'm part of the.
I'm going to get you an application tonight.
And it's AARP, right?
A $4 lunch.
Nice.
Well, thank you, Gina, very much for the presentation.
Okay, thank you all.
Have a good night. We'll move on to item B, assessor, pages 18 and 19 in our budget books. Good evening, Stuart.
Good evening, Madam Mayor.
And what would you like to share with us this evening?
What would I like to share? Nothing.
No, it's they're talking about your budget, Stuart.
The significant difference in my budget this year is our Eagle View flight is going from biannual to annual. That's the biggest change in my budget.
What is the Eagle View?
It's our aerial imagery that the majority of the departments in town utilize. For the most part, it pays for itself. You just don't ever see a line item in the budget saying revenue from it. People do work without permits and things like that, and this year on I believe March 28th, a plane flew over town, took a bunch of pictures, and shortly we'll be getting the results of what the differences is from the flight 2 years ago to this year. And if they didn't take out a permit, we'll be picking that up for assessment. So,
So is that like, for example, to see if the footprint on a house has changed, so an addition has been built or a swimming pool, that sort of thing?
yes.
Okay.
Yep. And zoning uses it for zoning compliance, and wetlands uses it, and I know the fire department uses it. So, but it gets a lot of usage. We've just outgrown the every other year. There's a significant enough changes every year now to where it that it warrants to have a flight every year.
So you figure that additional 12,000 or so, it'll pay for itself?
Absolutely.
Okay.
And how, you mentioned that's done once a year. What, is it either frequency or quality of data that would improve that to something like Google Earth or one of those other like satellite-based solutions?
Say that again?
So for using the Eagle View, is it something where like the annual, either the frequency of the data, being able to do it once a year and compare across years, or is there something that we're getting out of the data that would make it more appealing than using like a Google Earth or something like that?
The accuracy with this actual service, I can actually measure your house from my desk if I need to. So if you came in, questioned whether I did my job properly, I can sit there and go, here it is. I can see, like one time someone came in and said, hey, why are you assessing me for a shed? And I go, well, I believe you have a shed in your backyard. He goes, no, I don't. I pulled up the aerial photography, and literally the shed was like right on the line. And if you go out to somebody, if you look at your neighbor, where's the line? If you don't know where the line is. But generally I go with where the door is open to, the side that the house, the door is open to. Well, in this case, the door's open to the front. So I was like, I just kind of guessed, because previous to that, neither the house on the right or the left was being assessed for the shed. So when the homeowner came in and said, I don't own the shed, I looked and said, oh, you're right. And I just moved it over to the neighbor and assessed them appropriately. So it helped us out a lot with that stuff as well, too. So,
Thanks.
you're welcome.
So quick, you mentioned that other departments use it. Are they allocated a portion of the cost, or do they have to pay their own subscription, or how does that work exactly?
It's all in this line item.
So you're covering it for the other groups that are?
Yes.
Okay.
It's all in this line item. To break it out would be very difficult.
Yeah. No, that's fine. I just want to understand.
And the $29.50 for the online, that's so that you can access it and,
That's so we can access it from, we have two parts to this. There's the part that they actually give us the physical imagery, and we could put it on the network, and you can look at it through the network, or this part of it is we can actually access it online, which I believe everybody does it that way, because we can look at it anywhere. You know, so if I'm at home or I'm somewhere else, I can just look it up online through this service.
can the public access it at all, or just?
The public can actually access this imagery through the town's website and our map on site online. There's a little button that it shows it on the bottom and the right on the map.
Okay, yeah,
You just click that button and it'll bring up the imagery.
okay.
And Stuart, how are we doing with the computer system for the public to access the assessor cards? Is there?
I'm not sure
that
I
one of the
understand what you're.
So when people want to come in and do searches and get information.
It's right now for the online, we have it's an automatic update. Everything works great until it doesn't. And when it doesn't, we know about it in very short order, probably by like 8:35. We know that there's something happening with our link that connects it to the data.
So right now, the public can't access it through your website.
Yep.
And they can access the cards with no problems as long as, at the moment, because you don't know it. It's
Right.
not 8:35 yet, so.
Our latest field cards were just uploaded last week. So for the October 1st, 2021 grand list, they were just uploaded so they can see the current field card. But each night, our software is supposed to be updated automatically with the current owner. So if you sold the property and the clerk gets it recorded today, tomorrow if we get the data from the clerk tomorrow, we'll update the ownership, and then the next day you'll be able to see the new ownership. So.
Okay. And then I'm just curious about the overtime line
Okay.
and the 40% variance.
The overtime line is strictly for the Board of Assessment Appeals. So it is directly correlated to how much time the Board of Assessment Appeals takes to complete their duties.
But there's 2 meetings generally?
They meet twice a year, in March and in September. There's 1 meeting in September for motor vehicles only. This year in March, they had 3 meetings. They were scheduled to have 2, but they continued one of the meetings, so we had to have a 3rd meeting. But it all goes to how many appeals there are and then how long they take to do their duty.
And they're usually after hours.
And they usually start anywhere between 5 and 5:30, depending on the board's decision on when they want to start. And then they go until they finish their meeting. So, the time on that is strictly controlled by them.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions?
Just had one about the technology software. It mentions that the new system includes dog licensing, which was not included in the previous package. Does that mean that we get a savings somewhere else on our previous dog licensing solution?
Are you on assessors or town clerk?
Got me again on town clerk. Just looking ahead.
Well, you gave Sandy a heads up on what preparing an answer right now for you.
Run, Sandy, run.
Unless you want to take it.
Okay,
Dog fun.
We're ready.
Well, thank you, Stuart. I think we're good.
All right, thank you. Y'all have a good night.
Have a great night. Thank you. We'll move on to subsection C, the town clerk, pages 30 and 31 in your booklet.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the Town Council, Town Manager, and Finance Director. My name is Sandy Willaba, and I'm here to present my budget. Increases are
Good
from
evening.
contractual obligations and also the purchase of 2 software programs. One is Laserfish, which was purchased for all members of the Town Hall to use. I purchased 5 licenses. Laserfish allows me to build databases, to scan documents, and to search those documents because every document is OCR'd or optical character recognition. And I also have Onboard, which is used to put together all our boards and commission who serves on them, not only the current ones, but also members who have served in the past. So if anybody wants to look back and find out how long someone served on a board, we have all that information. Are there any questions I can answer?
Actually, I asked this question last time to the registrar of voters. I'm going to pose it to you, the same question. With the changes in law at the state level about absentee balloting, what kind of costs you foresee in the future, this year or going into the future, as we move towards more absentee balloting than less?
We are going to be moving toward more absentee ballots. I also want to see about having early voting. So that would have to be another option if it passes, and that's going to be placed on our ballot. We're not sure how that's going to work. The state doesn't know how it's going to work. We're not sure if it's going to be handled by the registrars or by my office. We're not sure if it's going to be put through a tabulator or if it's going to be very similar to the absentee ballots. The cost with absentee ballots is usually like 65 cents per ballot. So we always try to make sure we have enough ballots. And any other cost would be just by staff working extra hours to get these ballots out.
Do you have an estimate in mind, like what that might look like
Not
from a
really
cost perspective?
Yeah, I'm not really sure what it's going to look like this year. We are having a primary in August, and then we'll have the state election. So I'm not sure how many more ballots. We don't foresee that many more than we saw from the presidential.
Yeah, I think that's a fair assumption. Like, yeah,
And
safe
they did-
one,
Well,
probably.
they did change some language. They wanted to change the wording from illness to sickness. So that encompasses a lot more than just,
Right, right. It's almost like going to kind of, no excuse, right? So,
that's what we're aiming for.
yeah. But looks like we are covered here, right,
Yes.
from a budgeting perspective.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
So I have a couple questions. One is on the dollars, one is operational. So just on full-time salaries, we see a bump up of 9.3%. Can you explain that?
Those are the contractual obligations through the contracts.
Okay. My operational question has to do with the land records and what is available online.
Everything.
Okay, so not just the grantor grantee index, but you can actually click on and get copies of
is
images
correct.
of the actual documents.
That is correct. If you want one without a watermark on it, or it doesn't say unofficial, you can get it for free. If you
Okay.
just want to look at that document, maybe you want to have a question about a mortgage, how much was that mortgage? Do I have the right mortgage? You can look at anything free. Our maps are also there, trade names are there. And we're back to about the 1800s. So what I've been doing is going backwards. These are all the handwritten books now and scanning those in.
So that's an ongoing process then to load in the older, going back in
Right,
time.
because you have to re-index everything and then scan it through the scanner.
Right. Okay. Very good. Thank you.
All right, anyone else?
Yeah, first I just wanted to, it was very good to hear that you're doing OCR on the document conversion. And for the folks who don't know, it makes the document actually searchable. So if you're looking for a
Right.
word, you go in there and you can Control F and find instead of having to scan through however long that document is and read it. So that's a really good service. How do folks get to onboard or some of the other services that that are online? Is it through the town clerk's section of the site, or is there another way of that people can go and, if they're interested,
We'll
use those
probably be
tools?
putting that out on my site, and right now we're just finalizing what that looks like, and then we're just going to push it out. And that way people can see who's on these different boards and commissions, if there's any vacancies. And the same with all this Laserfish have been doing. Our vendor for general code, which is our codification and our charter, has a platform for minutes. And all the stuff I've done and scanned can now go right over there.
Oh, so all of the board and committee minutes, that'll be changing to a new vendor?
What we have now is on demand, but that doesn't have anything in the past. What I have are minutes going back to 1942 for the town council, the early 40s for town meetings. We should have town meetings. So these are all the minutes going all the way back.
And that's,
Wow.
do you have a time frame for when it's gonna get rolled out on the town, on the
Won't
site?
take long. All we do is just call up the vendor, and they have the platform right there, and just upload.
Oh, great.
And that's through the town clerk's
That's right on our
website
general code.
section in the website. Thank you.
And then I asked the wrong person about the about the dog licenses. So is that a savings that we get over by having that under the IQS program versus what we had how we previously managed those?
Right. And that's all included in their package for the dog licensing.
And is that something that people need to check on? I don't have a dog, so I don't know how it works. Do you have to license it? Like, does it expire? Like, there's something that people need to check? Oh, do I need to re-register my dog? They can just go online and
Right.
look that way?
Right. Every year they have to renew it. June is renewal time after receipt of a dog that's older, 30 days, or 6 months. And we're getting a lot more dogs now because if you want to board your dog, you have to have proof that you licensed that dog. Before they weren't requesting that. So we are seeing a lot of more people coming in that want to do it. So we do have a lot more dogs.
Thank you.
Are you really able to upload the rabies vaccine certificate, so you don't have to come in to do that? You could do it online?
Correct.
Okay, well, thank you, Sandy.
Thank you.
Have a great night. Moving on to subsection D, library, pages 86 and 87.
Hi, everyone. I'm Mary Hogan from the library, and with me is Assistant Director Mike Murphy. And I just wanted to start off by giving a shout out to our staff. The word pivot meant a lot to us in 2020, and it continues to mean things to us in 2021 and 2022. and into 2023. 2020, we went virtual, and now in the last couple of months, we have done what we call hybrid. So some of it's virtual, some of it's in person, and some of it's both. And I really have to thank the staff because they've just kept moving, and we're just seeing what people want, what they want in person or online. And it's kind of exciting because we're able to do really new, cool things with some technology. So again, I really need to appreciate the staff on how hard they've been working and trying to figure out some things. For the budget, it's below the salary line is pretty much the same as it has been for the last 14 years, a little bit lower than 14 years ago, but we've been able to do some improvements and some cost savings and just holding the cost. The one difference is what you've been asking or seeing for everyone, we now have the photocopier back into our budget. So that's the one highlight, so that's why you see all those zeros except for that 100%. And in the salary line, those are all the contractual agreements that we have. We have no new staff. We actually have a little less staff than about 12 years ago. And the part-time salary, we have one union position, so that is just part of that increase. And I'd be happy to answer any questions. Oh, I do want to say thank you. We do have our phone booth that just came in a couple of weeks ago, and it's getting used. We have had people do job interviews in it. We've had people do some medical appointments in it. We've been telling people who are on their cell phone to use that booth. The meeting pod is supply chain issues, and we hope to see it come in soon. The diversity books that we've been slowly adding, and we have gotten compliments that people now see themselves even more reflected in our collection. So that was our goal, was to make sure that we represent all. And it's been easier because the publishers are also bringing out more and more diverse books. So it was perfect timing on those books. And I'll invite you over for a small meeting when our meeting pod comes in, what people can fit in. But I'd be happy to answer any questions.
That's really exciting news, Mary.
Yeah.
Mona, I'm wondering, do any of these books fall under, that are listed, fall within the purview of the ARPA funds?
Well, these particular ones did not. We allocated the additional $7,500 in the beginning, which is in the separate fund for the ARPA. But as long as, there's any additional, they certainly would fit into that. And again, with the ARPA, with the broader definition, again, if you were something that you would fund in your general fund budget, it certainly could be piece of that.
How has it been going with the adoption of some of the new technology, like the self-service kiosk? Is there anything else like that where, it seems maybe we're doing hybrid things for a while, I'm not really sure. That would be similar to that we should keep in mind over the coming months?
We keep investigating things. We also are part of a consortium that's part of our library system, and they just introduced a new app. So we now have a new app for libraries, so we're 24/7. We're going to send out information at your next Monday's council meeting about that app. But those are the things that we kind of look at. We are constantly looking at technology. We have part of the last year's technology, we implemented an inventory system that's really cool. If you see either Mike or I with a wand or some of the other staff, we can find things that should be on the shelf, that's not on the shelf, so we constantly are looking at it. But we made great leaps in the 2020-21, and now we're just sort of like using what we put into place.
And do you know, I don't think we did it maybe the last couple of years. Is the kids' art show coming back this year?
We had it in March.
It came
Yes,
back.
we had it in March. It was great. It was great to see it back. We were working with the students again in June, that some of our honor students will be having small art shows that they do as part of their portfolio. So that will be there. But it was great to have them back.
Very cool. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Nope.
Well, thank you both
Thank you.
very much for the presentation. Moving on to subsection E, Facilities. We have a couple of sections here. We'll begin with building maintenance, section 1, pages 82 and 83. Are you handing out something, Mr. Seer?
Yeah, Phil has a handout, so sure.
Sorry, Madam Mayor, I could have somebody run one to you.
Yes, did you?
Thank you.
Okay, so Phil Sear, Facilities Director. I'll get to the line item that has the biggest increase this year, and that's the full-time salaries. Trying to get a new position for the facilities. And if I may, I'll read the cover sheet here. It's a general crafts person position. For maintenance nationally, the median number of square feet per FTE, which is full-time employee, is 50,000 square feet per FTE per 8 hours. The total square footage at the facilities department maintains is approximately 159,000 square feet. This square footage does not reflect the maintaining of the electrical infrastructure in the parks, so that's Elm Ridge, Maxwell, and Ferry, and then building, plumbing, drains, infrastructure as well does not. And it does not, as well, it does not include the 70 new LED fixtures on the Solstein Highway, plus the existing 10 LED fixtures along Church Street heading towards the Solstein, and the possible future structure at Straska Farm if it does come to fruition. Our facilities department is made up of 2 facilities trades mechanic, and an HVAC mechanic and an electrical mechanic. Both combined, their coverage should be 1,000 square feet. A third trades mechanic would bring the coverage to 150,000 out of the 159. This position would be a carpenter / building trades person. This position's responsibilities would be to take over from the existing mechanics the door hardware repairs, key systems, metrics, fob system, and door programming, fire extinguisher system maintenance, overhead door PMs and repairs, gutter inspections and repairs, minor roof repairs, roof drain inspections, and cleaning. At the present time, the 2 trades perform these duties. This position would take over from the custodial day staffs their repair of flooring, ceiling, cubicle breakdown, cubicle rebuild, and do more extensive repairs and builds. This position will assist the trades mechanics when there is need for 2 tradespersons to perform a task safely, and to be able to so they could be able to concentrate also on their specific trades task. The position will assist the facilities director as well in managing projects and managing large building repairs. Overall, the position would enable the trades mechanics to concentrate on their own trades expertise, concentrate keeping up on their PM work orders, which leads to mechanical system efficiencies, and help reduce the outside mechanical contract in the facilities contract line item, and the possible reduction in the building repair and building maintenance line items in future budget cycles. We will also enable the day custodial staff to fill in for a staff person at PD when on vacation, personal time, or sick time. This will help prevent pulling from our second shift staff at the Town Hall Community Center to fill in and not create voids in their own assigned areas. We have a workforce that has longevity, and with longevity we have more accumulated contracted vacation time, personal time, as well as sick time. This position will help both the facility and custodial side of operations. The next page has some charts. The first chart depicts all the work orders, PM and non-PM. So there's 75% PMs and 25% non-PMs. The next chart is work orders, PM only, in the turnaround comparison. So we're able to get to 945 of them, but 250 are always, well, not always, 250 are the ones that lag behind because we can't get to them. And the new position would decrease the delay response time on mostly the PMs for the existing mechanics by taking on more of the non-trade work orders and PMs from the two existing mechanics. The last graph is work orders by key position. So the trade HVAC mechanic has obviously much more PM work orders than the other two lines here. The trade HVAC, the non-PM portion is all the work that he does that is, the doors, door hardware, again, the fob system and key system. Those are his non-trade responsibilities right now. The electrical trade, the non-PMs basically kind of will stay the same. His PM portion will shrink a little bit. The third line is the actual custodian's assistance to the facilities department. The work order system and the PM system is mainly a facilities department function. But in order to be able to get to the work that we do that's non-trade, the custodians have been picking that up. But what that has been doing is stretching them thin. So it shows that the custodial department taking on facilities department work orders and PMs to compensate for the facilities labor shortfalls. So if you take custodial out of there and then place it with the new position, the class position, virtually he would be doing that work. What that would do for the custodian, especially the two on day staff, is to let them, enable them to do more custodial type work during the day. And it would also help compensate for, again, vacations, especially at the PD building, where one of the two positions can go over and cover. And this way, it doesn't take any of the second shift positions' time to be able to try to fill that void. And that's kind of it in a nutshell.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions?
Hey, Phil, I had a question. How are you?
Sure.
And you made reference to this in the cover. I appreciate you putting this together because it's helpful for this new position. You mentioned there's be some offsetting expenses with maybe outside contractors and things.
Yes. So
Is that factored in here at all, or like maybe walk us through a little bit how you?
No. Well, my service contract portion increased. It increased by $3,000 based on the 6 HVAC units on the community center, the new stuff. The other portion of that increase is just contractual labor increases type thing, 2-3%. So my plan is this year is to contract that maintenance, because they're fresh units, brand new, with the assistance of my HVAC mechanic, also going through those units with the contractor, okay, for this one more year. After this year, we can pull that back out, meaning we could save that $3,000, because I will not have the outside contractor continue maintenance on the new stuff.
And if this position was to be fully funded, do you anticipate having someone available to start July 1st, or is there going to be a lag because just the way the labor market is? Or?
Well, we wouldn't be able to do really anything until we confirm the funding, so yeah, it'd be after July 1st.
That's it for me. Thanks.
Anyone else?
If we're not able to include the craftsperson, what strain does that put on the team? I mean, I know you just explained how it pulls resources up, but what's the impact of not having that person?
So the impact, the HVAC mechanic would not be able to close that gap of turnaround time, okay, of the 215 work orders. So it would eliminate the non-trade stuff that he does now, which in theory and hope is that that 215 would shrink, so we'd get better, better time efficiency, with the PMs per se. He has the most PMs, and it's due to the mechanical systems because we have them in all our buildings. So yes, so right now he's having, he can't complete them all. And eventually, if you don't get your PMs, that's where your breakdowns start. Most of his non-PMs is the non-trade, but a portion of that is repairs, but it's a small portion. So the PMs are working, the system, but it could work better if we could shrink that gap.
Thanks. And then you mentioned we just added the 70 new. You mentioned the LED fixtures that are being maintained. Including the ones on the Celestine streetscape, is there a lot of maintenance that has to go around them once the LEDs are installed, or how? Well,
they're in operation now, right? So I think Steve will probably know, but the year is probably running out pretty quick for the LED fixtures on Celestine.
Well, we haven't totally accepted the project yet.
Okay. Well, this is, once it is accepted, we would be taking on the responsibility of the maintenance of them.
So that's just in case something happens. Certainly not my area, but usually the LEDs are supposed to last a while.
Correct. So, yeah, they're usually a 5-year warranty on them, but there's photocells on them, there's GFI receptacles on them that the Christmas lights plug in. Those are the things. Those are the components that will go first. Typically, the driver and the lamp rail will last about 5 years.
Thanks.
Yep.
Could I ask you a question on the custodial side?
Sure.
You want
I know
to
this
finish
is-
this page and move to the next?
Okay, yeah. Are we finished with this page? It sounds like it. Okay, let's move to the town custodial services, pages 84 and 85. Do you want to go through that before I ask a question?
No, go ahead. We'll just jump right into it.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, well, first of all, I never really realized that you were going into Academy Hall and cleaning that. So is that those custodial supplies when it says at Academy Hall?
Yes, well, that's, the constituents of the building, the people that run it, it's only one bathroom, so they tend to keep it clean and neat anyways, but we do supply product.
Okay. Is there anything you want to talk about
I'll ask a
specifically?
quick question. Just overtime's jumping up a bit. Is that just a contractual, like a hourly rate, or you just anticipating more hours, or?
So that's originally, when I put the budget together, we were possibly gonna ask for another custodial position because we're anticipating getting the firehouses to clean, and that, that didn't come to fruition. So that amount of that amount is high, okay? We can take 1,500 out of that.
Okay.
The custodial services, again, in the community center, I noticed there's never any recycling bins where we have lunch. And I know that the bins probably would they come under Joe Lentini's department?
No,
Or-
we would
or
supply whatever bins we needed. I did have a conversation with John Mayer this morning about the kitchen and the different recycle avenues per se. That's what you want to call it for the food and the plastics and such.
It's primarily
what-
just food and.
What have you figured out to do with that?
So Phil, it's pretty much just food but is it plastic or styrofoam plates?
Yeah.
And
Yeah, metal.
Utensils.
We already recycle the metal.
okay. And the boxes that,
And boxes
supplies.
and cardboard, right. This would be the added recycling.
And
Phil,
so, and
I'm sorry.
then when people are done having their lunch and you have like that garbage bin out, will there also be a recycling bin so people could throw, whatever cardboard or their plastic water cups or their
Yes.
plastic utensils?
I guess embarrassingly, we don't have that right now, but we can certainly provide it. Absolutely.
So Phil, this is certainly not a complaint, just full-time salaries and part-time salaries are both show us completely flat. Ordinarily, you have some raises baked into the collective bargaining agreements. Did you have some turnover or?
No,
no,
Not settled yet.
the contract for the custodials expires June 30th.
Okay.
So we're in negotiations, so there's no increase yet, but if there is an increase, it'd be a transfer from contingency.
I see, okay.
So we're in negotiations now.
Got it, thank you.
This may be more for Mona, but I'm just going out on a limb here, but is there any way to use any ARPA money for custodial staff because this cleaning is kind of COVID-related to make sure everything is, ultra clean and,
We actually have, and when we had COVID money, we used quite an amount of supplies and some overtime. So it actually does kind of fit into that area. So, yes.
And on an ongoing
Into the
basis,
ARPA.
like on an ongoing basis, is there ARPA money that can be used to offset custodial, like salaries and things, or?
Well, of course, the risk of that is if you are going to put it in, then the ARPA is going to expire by 2024, so you would be back into just trying to, restaff it in the following budget
No,
year.
I'm not saying to add.
Certainly.
I'm not saying to add custodial. I'm just saying with
Oh,
the
even
current
to
staff we have,
shift.
if we,
Yeah.
just to,
Just keeping in mind that we'd bring it back, but
yeah.
yes.
I mean, maybe
yes.
something to think about.
I think in a sense, with putting the 1.4 million into this, we are in a sense accomplishing that. But if we wanted to take additional and move it out to use the other portion of the 1.4, because it's 2.9 for the year.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, just trying to think creatively, just to try to,
I'm with you, yeah.
Is there a list of that 1.4, like a supplement to this budget?
I believe I probably have one. I always have a list. I can get something for you.
Thank you. All right. Have we asked Mr. Seer all our questions?
Here,
Sounds like
so,
we have. Thank you. Thank you, Phil.
Thank you. Thanks, Cal.
Okay, I don't know if we should all take a break and have a drink before we hear from Mr. Bowman, but we'll call him up. Parks and Rec. And we'll begin with Section 1 grounds, pages 74 and 75.
Are we having a break or no?
No,
All right, let's roll. Hour intermission. Before I get started, obviously you guys know who I am, but I'd like to take this moment to thank the Parks and Recreation staff that we have in place. These past few years have definitely been pretty challenging, but we're rising above, and really fortunate to have them as a part of the team here in Rocky Hill. So, quickly, I'd like to thank Rita and her front office staff. They're rock stars, especially with this changeover to the new community senior center. They've been a huge help. Nick and Logan have kept the programs afloat and kept us going at the rec supervisory level. And then obviously everyone knows Walt and our parks crew, Anthony, Brett, Justin, Tom, Johnny Stevens, and Nico, as well as all the seasonal help we get too. So I'd like to publicly thank them. And, I think the town's lucky to have these public servants serving the town. Jumping into it with the Parks and Grounds, you'll see up at the top, we do have some increases in, full-time salaries, part-time salaries, which is kind of a common theme within all three parts of our budget. Small increases there, as well as overtime, with the full-time salaries increasing for the next fiscal year. Slight increase in tree care of $3,000, and then getting down to field supplies, we have some increases in field supplies, due to supply cost between fertilizer, lime, Turvis, which is the product that you use to dry ball fields, as well as marking paint. Those are all industry-wide increases. It's not just a local thing. This is happening all over the country. And we have about a $5,000 increase in our grounds improvement account, which is basically some new addition with the beautification of Town Hall campus here. We've added some pollinator flower pots to the mix, as well as more surface area that we have to take care of. And then there is some money in there to repair and overseed, slice seed, the Mosier School field. So all in all, small increases in those particular areas of Parks and Grounds. Happy to take any questions on this section of the budget.
I'll start.
I'm curious where the pollinator pots are going.
We've added pots to this Town Hall campus as part of the addition. So we've added those out in front, as well as on the opposite side of the building, as part of the Town Hall beautification, which is something that we do every year.
Okay.
A couple things. One, similar question I asked to Phil Sear. On overtime, is that more hours? Is it a higher rate, a combination of the two, or?
It's a combination of the two based off of what we've seen. I don't know, maybe Joe can answer this, but the past couple of years, I think for whatever reason, we've had a lot of longer duration storms than usual. Not as much snow, but it's been more wet and, harder to control from like an ice standpoint. But also their salaries are increasing, so we have to account for that.
Gotcha. Okay. And so increasing in like ground improvement is, those types of things. Is that kind of based on inflation because the prices are going up, or using more of it, or more just cost for the same amount of material, basically?
Not so much in the grounds improvement area. We're actually, one of the things that we're doing is the main increase in grounds improvement has to do with Mosier School, with the athletic field. I shouldn't call it an athletic field. It's really a common field. It's a common use field. So we do, have soccer and lacrosse in that field. But what we found during COVID is when the students were taking mask breaks, that's where they went. They went all over that field. And that's really the only green space aside from the baseball field that's at that school. So it gets a ton of traffic. And what we found too is in that section of town, that school field as well as the playground and facilities there is almost like a mini park for that part of town. So it gets a ton of usage. So, to make it look nice and green, we have to do some work there.
Gotcha. And the equipment, I'm looking at the wrong one. Field maintenance supplies, that's
Yes.
like the Turfish, that's, yeah.
Yeah, Turfis is the drying agent that we
Oh, I
use
know
on
what it
some
is.
of our fields. you know all about that, Jeff.
Very aware.
And and then marking paint, and that's a nationwide thing as well. I mean, we've gotten to the point where we've actually worked together with some of our neighboring towns around us. Walt does a good job. He's got a consortium from Cromwell, Newington, and Berlin, and they work together, and sometimes we'll order together and then store the paint to knock down some of the shipping costs. So
Better volume pricing and things, yeah.
exactly.
That's good to see. Do the Little League or the soccer club do they purchase any of this, or this is all Parks and Rec that purchases?
We
this
purchase this, but there have been situations in the past where if there's a soccer goal that needs replaced or something along those lines, the Rocky Hill Soccer Club will step up and buy the goal. Same with some of the equipment at the Little League fields.
Okay, great, thanks.
Yep.
Any more questions with respect to grounds? All right, why don't we move on to organized activities, pages 78 and 79.
All right, organized. So we had some small increases, obviously with full-time salaries, contractual. At the part-time level, we did have an increase for office coverage due to minimum wage increases across the board in the state of Connecticut. Then a small increase in program activities, mainly due to Fall Fest. We're asking for a little bit more money for Fall Fest to help offset some of the amusement costs, because we are looking to change the company that provides amusements for Fall Fest, and it's going to be a little bit more expensive, we believe. And yeah, I think in a nutshell, that's basically organized activities.
Were you afraid of punkage in your line 5541? Is that why that's 0? The printing?
Oh, which one?
Printing.
Yeah, the printing one.
Actually, that's a decrease from what we used to do, significantly. So we actually shrunk. We went from 4 brochures years ago to 3. So we have a summer brochure, a fall brochure, and then a winter spring brochure. In addition to that, we do not send the brochure out to every household anymore. That's actually a new thing we've done as well. We print about 500 copies of each brochure that we keep in the center, as well as, we give some to the library and some other schools and other prominent spots in town. But, what we found, especially over the pandemic or during the pandemic, was people were starting to consume content digitally versus, tangibly. So that's part of that cost is also the designer fees for the actual brochure. So I think our department's actually been pretty responsible with that.
I mean, I'm not gonna. You're already making progress there, so I'm not gonna harp on that. But I think what you said there is really true. Like in all seriousness about the digital content, right? Like so, I think the more we move towards that, more than we are already moving, right? Conceivably,
Yep.
I think that'll be better. And I know there's a big population in town which needs those printed materials.
Of course.
And so I get that, but I'm trying to just optimize these things. And thank you for putting that on the line. So
Yeah, and I also, just so you guys know, now at the pools and at our camps, we're not constantly printing out rosters left and right. Counselors can access the rosters, through an iPad on site instantly. If we have someone that comes in on a Monday morning and oh my God, I need to sign my kid up for camp.
Right.
Forgot to do it last week. We can get them in. We don't have to print off any new rosters. They're in, and it uploads right to the site.
So this is not directly related to the budget, but I wanted to, since I got you here, I wanted to get your thoughts on like integrating more of your activities and like how you communicate, across, which is related to like brochures and things like that, with the app, with the new app, right? And I think we have limited integration there, if any. I think right now. So, is there a way to like kind of piggyback on the app, the townwide app more, and not just from a cost perspective, but also from perspective of like people using just one app to go for all their information to that app?
Well, I think you can, the app does have the Parks Department as like a separate brick or whatever the term is. But then you're looking at a high percentage of their activities are through their Park and Rec, Special Rec.
Through MyRec.
MyRec.
Yeah.
And
Right, so
you got people trained on that and so on. So, but I think it's, the app is a secondary one, and I'm not sure how much linkage it is as far
I think
as
they can talk to each other. I've had some initial meetings with John Nowakowski about this, and that's definitely on our radar as far as pushing out content. We've found that a lot of our success in marketing our programs is actually due to email communication, believe it or not. Email works very well. Facebook works as well, and then obviously just pushing people to our site. But I do think, and I don't want to belabor this too long, but I do think that those two can talk to each other, the app and MyRec, or the website.
Since we already have a placeholder there, right, to John's point, I think I was thinking more of, and the reason I'm saying this is like, I do agree, like you have a lot of like email communication and the Facebook, there are all these channels you are on, but I do think at some point it becomes a little bit of kind of a chore to like go and check like Facebook and then check like if a date has changed, like a rain day or something.
Facebook's a big chore.
I agree.
In general.
Nobody should have to do that unless they are totally required to do it, but myself included. So here's the thing. I just want to keep that on your radar because I know like you're working at the back end, but I think the more content we bring to the app, you will have more users, and you will find that actually at the end of the day, you're spending less time on Facebook.
Yes, sir.
Because you can like put your content like everything on one app, and I think that's easier for the user as well. I do think that, and it will actually eventually lead to like some eventual like cost savings as well. Okay. I really think it will. It's a long-term thing, but I just wanted to bring it up, Trent.
Understood.
But thank you.
Yep.
Yeah, and just building off of that, one of the things that is very useful with the app once you install it and you just start getting the notifications. So it'd be I think you guys do a great job with the Facebook and the Instagram, those posts. But if you were able to just get the notification, oh, new Parks and Rec program's up, I could sign up my kids, for Winter Wonderland or whatever the program might be. Maybe it's making sure that the notification goes out because you want to get tickets for the drive-in. Even if it's just that reminder pops up and then I can click through to get to my rec, that would be, I think, a big win, because it takes one, it cuts out a step for folks, and it also gets people out of the Facebook overhead. So I'm sure it's a big project, but it makes it a little bit more active than having to see something, make a note. Oh yeah, I got to go back when when I'm in front of my laptop, that type of thing.
I have no problem migrating away from the Zuckerberg metaverse.
Yeah. But just and also just you mentioned that we're switching the vendors that provide the amusements for Fall Fest. So how does that work? We hire them and they keep the ticket sales, or
Nope.
do we get?
No, we hire them and then we charge for the wristbands, and we take money back in to help offset that cost.
So potentially, if they have rides that are more appealing or whatever, some of that cost could wash out.
Yes.
Thanks.
Aquatic?
Go ahead.
Okay. So aquatics, we were actually able to keep this part-time payroll stable for this coming year. Nick has done a good job evaluating the way we staff the pools year-round. So that was big. We do have a small increase in training, just with the amount of staff recertifications that are taking place in the coming year. As you may or may not know, we do certify all of our staff for CPR first aid certification, and they do have to get recerted every 2 years if they're still on our staff. We did have a small increase in the maintenance of the pool just due to startup costs for Elm Ridge Pool for startup and close up. And then the last one, which is it's about a 25 to 30% industry-wide standard increase for chemicals, specifically with chlorine and the shipping of it. And that's another one where we've tried to work with neighboring towns to stock up so that we're getting less shipments and more product. So that's aquatics.
Thank you. Any questions on aquatics? All right, well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Moving on to G, Community Development 1, Town Planner, pages 32 to 33.
I got it. All right, good evening. Most of you know me. I'm Stephen Soplak. I'm the Director of Public Works and Community Development Services. And since we last met to do this face-to-face 2 years ago, we've seen many changes. Jim Salmi, our 30-plus year director, is retired, and I've assumed his position. His admin, Marge Nevico, 30-plus years, retired. J.P. Langlois, our old building official, 30-plus years, he's retired. And now we have Mike Violet in the audience. He'll be coming up. He's our new building official, so you guys might have not met him. And their admin, Nancy, who's over 25 years, retired. So we've seen a lot of changes and more to come. A lot of institutional knowledge has left the building. In keeping with the tradition of what Jim used to do, I've asked all the different department heads to come and speak to their budgets, and I'm here with them. And I am actually still the town engineer, so I'll be answering those questions. So without further ado, Kim Ritchie, Town Planner.
Hi, how are you this evening? We do have some changes in our budget, and that's due to new Connecticut legislation, specifically Public Act 2129. Has a lot of mandated changes through zoning regulations, also mandated training for our land use boards, which I've been a proponent of for years. And now that it's mandated, I'm really kind of excited about that. A lot of it deals with affordable housing. There's a big push in the state now to modify our zoning regulations to make things more affordable, whether it be defined by statute or just in general, more affordable housing in town. So we are seeing some increase in member expenses with respect to that. With respect to dues and subscriptions, also mandated, for example, the zoning enforcement. If you are certified as a zoning enforcement officer, you must now be recertified and retake the classes, and the dues are increasing also. So a lot of that has been mandated as well. We also have contractual obligations with respect to, we have 2 unions, we have 2 staff people, 2 different unions. So that's different. Recording secretary for planning and zoning. Under COVID, there oftentimes wasn't attendance in person at meetings or even on the Zoom, and they would watch the YouTube video. I find that channel to be very helpful if I have to go back and review things. So now it's more in-person meetings, that's what we're doing now. So there's a charge for attendance at meetings as well. I don't know if there's any other questions. Yes.
Kim, this isn't budgetary, but while we have you in the room, can we expect to see revisions to the zoning regulations in the near future to make and conform to the new statute?
Actually, we've been working on it piecemeal. We've been doing that a little bit at a time. We've also modified our accessory apartment regulations to allow for more than 1 per property per the state statutes, and also to allow for detached accessory apartments, which is required per legislation. We've also updated our parking requirements with respect to multifamily housing as well as accessory apartments. So we're kind of doing it a little bit at a time.
Okay.
We've also modified our regulations recently concerning the adult use cannabis. We have a moratorium that's still in place concerning adult use cannabis with respect to dispensaries. For a while there, we had a moratorium in place for any adult use cannabis, whether it be a production facility and or dispensary. We have modified that moratorium subsequently to allow for adult use cannabis production facilities. We have an existing production facility in town that had been dealing with medical marijuana. It only makes sense that they continue and produce variation.
Okay, thank you. Just along those last lines, how I'm not fully up to date on all the different regulations. I know they've tried passing a lot of different configurations in terms of who can host those dispensaries. They try to target, I think, communities where there's been, an impact of some of the other past policies. Is that something that, in terms of the town having a dispensary, should the moratorium lift, would we even be eligible to host one? Or based on what the regulations are, is who can open them up?
It's based upon population size, so technically we could have a dispensary in town.
And then, would there be, as far as where it could be located, if we even were open to that kind of business, that would be a decision for planning and zoning, or a council decision?
I believe it could be in our regulations, our zoning regulations. We presently have in our regulations setback requirements from public parks, schools, places of worship, which is a standard zoning language. It would be the same.
Yeah, and were we to host them, we would benefit from an additional tax rate from, for the facilities. Was that part of the final regulations that got passed?
Correct. I have the several hundred pages of regulations, if you care to see them.
I don't.
But also, any tax money comes in there, they restrict what they can be used for, right, Kim? So you can't put it in the general fund, you have to use it for specific items based on the legislation.
Similar to the, what we're getting for the
NIPS.
The NIPS.
NIP money.
Not as good as the NIPS one, though.
And then for the affordable housing plan, there's a note here that it's going to be completed in spring. Does that get brought to the council for approval, or is it all run through P&Z?
That's through planning and zoning. That will be, certainly, we will report on it to you.
And then that ties into, I think, the line 5326 for the consultant. Last year, we had allocated $20,000. Is that now going away?
Well, that's going to
Yes,
be,
Yep.
the study's being done this year, so the money was
Correct.
budgeted for in this year's budget. And you don't have any other studies coming up next year, so you didn't
No.
budget for
So
that.
that was a one-time fee.
Yeah, one-timer.
Thanks.
Okay. Why don't we move on to Section B, building?
So as I said, a couple years ago, JP retired as well as his admin, so you don't see it here, but reflected in that with Mike moving up, there was savings in salaries over the last couple years. Now you're starting to see the increment, their increases, but over what it was a couple years ago, it's still less. One thing that is not reflected here, well, a couple items, you'll see telephones on everybody's pages. We're all assuming our own cell phones that we have, so that's going to be an increase. But one thing that you're not going to see here, which came up after these were done, is our software vendor for our building software is struggling. And their top guy who wrote our program, it's a custom program, has left the company. So we now have 0 customer support, which is posing a problem to something as simple as changing a date to get 2022 on our billing permits was a monumental task. So we've searched vendors, and through Capital Region Council of Government, CROG, they have 2 vendors available. We've interviewed them both. It would be an increase to what we are now. Again, we're getting no service for what we're paying. But that's something that we're going to need to do, otherwise we're back to pen and paper.
So it's sort of like a two-part project that we need to switch over to a new vendor so that we can continue doing things electronically. A lot of the permits are taken out. People come up to the front desk and type everything in and so on. And our current vendor is lacking in adequate support for us to continue to move forward. So as Steve mentioned, they looked at CROG, who went out and got bids. And there's 2 vendors out there that are being used by CROG towns. And Mike and Steve came together and found one that they liked. The catch is that there's an upfront cost to transition from the current system, the information over to the new system, and do whatever that is, the front-end costs. And that's approximately $40,000.
The upfront,
Steve?
yeah, so what I have here is the upfront cost is around $53,000, and then the annual cost is $19,600, and if we lock in for 5 years, it's $19,600 every year. Otherwise, per the CROG contract, they can go up 5% a year, so that'd be $19,600 times 105 every year for 5 years. So that would be beneficial to lock in, and that's, you don't have to pay that one up front. It's the $19,600 every year. Right now, we're paying, I think, like $7,000 for the product we have now, so it is a substantial increase. One benefit is we can make just about any changes we want anytime. We don't have to call them, and that's the biggest problem we've had. Mike can answer those questions. Tell them what the problems are.
Well,
Yeah, just with this new software we're looking at, you could edit anything. So that was the big problem with the, is the big problem with the software we're using now. For any little change, we need to do like a work ticket, and it takes 3 to 4 weeks for them to even make a change for us.
If they make it.
Yeah, so it's been a problem, and we're always making little changes. I mean, even for instance, we're getting building permit applications, and they're missing site plans on it or something. We can't even go in and do a reminder. Please submit plot plan with building permit application, or and then the codes are changing and dates, and it's been a struggle for since actually day one when we started using this software a couple years ago.
It was great when it started, but they never supported it. So that's been our issue.
So I think going forward, as you can hear that there is a need for this upgrading in the software program for the building department. I think what we might do on Monday night is when we hit that line item for ARP money, they propose the costs associated with transitioning over to this new software and getting everything data updated and whatever other items that they need to do, which is approximately the cost to put the new software.
Cost for the new software and the
cost.
The cost to implement
that you would need
is
to transition over, so we can get started on this.
I want to say it's 50. I thought
Mike,
I had it here.
There's a time frame, right? How long would it take to do this?
Oh, it's probably a year to get it up and rolling correctly.
So the sooner we can start it,
I want to say
the sooner the year is.
It's like 55,000, plus or minus, and I don't have the exact round numbers.
Well, we'll say 55,000.
I have it here.
And that way, it would get them started, because you're still going to need the current system to keep, hopefully.
1 more year.
Right.
Keep the system, hopefully the system will be able to service for the next year. And then, do you need to budget for next year for the 5-year service charge?
For the annual fee, yes. So that,
or do you have the money available to do that?
no, we would have to budget to 19.6 for the annual.
Okay, so that would be the strategy of trying to relieve this dilemma with our building department software.
So is that not in here right now, that 1960?
No.
Not in there.
As I said, this was put together in January, February, and this just came about at
Didn't
the
we
end of
think we
March.
could get 7,000 from Stewart or something, or somewhere,
We may have some funds.
if we take the old one out?
Yep.
So I have a question. So this new vendor and this new software is, I'm just trying to wrap my head around how we got into this situation. We were dependent on one guy. If he retires, we're out of luck here. Is there not some sort of uniform, or at least a template out there for building departments that you can work off of, as opposed to hiring a local outfit to create a custom program for you that is dependent on their staffing and retirements and that sort of a thing? I find this disturbing that we're in this situation.
So this software came in probably 10 years ago, and it was brought in actually through the assessor's office, and that's what our base GIS mapping is that you see online. And they have a bunch of forms and sold to the town as you can create your own forms and create your own things without us. And there's a lot of sharing going on. And what's happened over the years is this vendor's concentrated on a certain geographic area of the country, and we're kind of outside his area, so he's kind of just neglected us over the years. They're still in business. It's just the main guy who wrote the program left. I don't know why, but left. And so skipping ahead to the company we're looking at, there's 40 towns in Connecticut that are changing software. 25 of those 40 are going with the one that we're looking at. It's a nationwide company versus a more regional company. It's been functional, but it's just come to fruition in the last short amount of time. It just not working and no service. And like I said, that guy left and they're struggling. So I can't answer why it got to there. As I said, it's worked up until the last few months.
I just can't fathom how we can have a whole town department, basically relying on this one guy if he decides to retire or leave.
Well, the owner's still there. The company's still there.
That appears to be cold comfort.
It
if
is.
The guy isn't there anymore. That's just a very odd, helpless position to find ourselves in.
But
Yes.
I was going to say, I believe the company is still in existence. Your
company's in
preference has been to one
Right.
programmer
Yeah,
who writes. So it's not that we chose a vendor of one man. It was
Right.
a vendor.
No, it's a vendor. It's a company.
A vendor, but the preference is to one
Yeah,
programmer.
Somebody bigger, national.
Correct.
It's kind of like, we buy from a local pizza place and all of a sudden he goes out of business. I mean, we got to find another one. It's not that it's not we were trying to put anybody in a bad position.
That's the last thing I would be suggesting. I'm
that
just
was
talking
the
about
vendor.
finding ourselves in this position that we're dependent on this one person. I would hope that this next company has some bench, so that if one guy retires, that it's seamless.
They're nationwide, and as you see with technology companies, they come and go. I mean, Twitter was just sold to Elon Musk, and they're hurting. So I don't think there's guarantees. I know it's not reassuring. There's no guarantees on any company out there, but it was a regional company, not a national. And at the time, there weren't many national companies doing this. This is all evolving rapidly. This technology, and it was brought in for the use of assessor, tax collector, engineering, building, everybody. It just wasn't one department, the vendor, and it was a town-wide. We had a committee sat down.
Right. Steve's going
So-
back in history 10 years ago when
When
things
they
were
came
sort
on
of
board.
bundled with this, and then GSI, I think, was coming out on its own and so on.
Yeah.
So we went with a company that probably was providing more services to the assessor's department downstairs, but then they had these offshoots. So we went with the building department one because they needed something electronically. And I guess once it got programmed and up and running, it was okay.
Yeah.
Worked out well for a while, but then the company sort of let slip that they didn't have a good bench to support all these other services, and they might be focusing in on more profitable lines as opposed to something like the building department. And so when that came, they looked into it, and again, using the CROG bid and what other towns are doing, so you do have that volume of usage by other towns instead of a few towns, so that you should, going forward, have adequate support. But also, you got to look at the vendors for not really providing good service to their customers, because they're going to lose a number of, a few companies.
They're a regional company. They're a New England company.
So that brings up a interesting point in my head, at least. So is the assessor's office still using this company?
For now, but they will have to migrate eventually too.
So I think it's just a matter of time before they need to change your date too, and they
So-
find themselves in the same position.
We'll have
The better mousetrap type theory.
We'll have to have a new.
Go to something better, but.
We'll have to have somebody new eventually to host the GIS mapping and whatever permit type things that Stewart has built over the years. Like I said, it was sold to us as you can build your own permits, and when they first came out, you could go online and see all the different towns and municipalities in the region that had, we have this particular form we need. We can copy it and just change the name and add a couple things.
Yeah,
And it
but
was
I'm
working,
trying to-
But then it went away.
No, I get it, Steve. So I'm just wondering, if this is a broader problem to be solved. So once we get this bid in, is it for other departments as well?
Well, it's going to help with.
Well, the
Town clerk.
other departments could migrate over to it. But the other departments aren't having the problems that the building department is having.
We make changes all the time, and the beauty of this new software that we're looking at is we're able to edit, so we don't have to depend so much on the software company.
No, I
GIS,
get
we're more
that.
dependent, yeah. And building permit software has evolved, it keeps evolving. When we kind of jumped on board, it was not many towns were going to digital yet. They were still doing paper. Now a lot of towns everybody's trying to go paperless, so more
Yeah.
towns are jumping on, permitting software. And this particular one that we looked into, a lot of neighboring towns are using it.
No, I'm all for, like, weaning off of this dependency. I'm just thinking, like, should we wean off of this dependency, like, a little bit from a strategic perspective, all of it?
Oh, yeah.
If you don't trust the company.
No, that's the plan. That's the plan.
Yeah,
But we
that's
can't
all I'm-
just-
that's all I'm
cut them
suggesting.
loose and have nothing.
Well, I
Have to
think
have-
we're looking at a implementation or an integration project of the 55,000. I think we'd probably want to make sure what's the scope of that. It's a year-long project. If it makes sense to include other things, usually in the world of software, you get a benefit from having a larger, including other things as part of the migration. That way, you don't have to pay full boat again,
Well,
a year or two from now.
To a point, like I wanted to put our street excavation permits on there, and we wanted to do the planning and zoning application and the wetland application and all those. And each time you do, that's another $4,000 or $5,000
Well, I think it's something
a year.
Yeah, I mean,
So if we can bundle that as one department, 4,000, it's worth it. But to call each one its own department, not worth it.
Yeah, I think it's worth exploring, depending also on the impact. As you were going through this, one of the things that stuck out was, you mentioned that if someone's submitting a building permit application and they don't have, they're missing something, the application isn't complete, you might not be able to notify them. That
Correct.
might mean that they don't get to go to the meeting, which might take a month or two, building a month or two longer into getting that permit approved, which puts them further from getting their project done and us further from getting the tax revenue. So it's something that if it happens quickly,
Right.
it could pay for itself.
Yeah. Well, in general, building permit, they usually don't have to go to a meeting unless they're going to need a variance.
Sure.
Or a
yeah.
wetlands permit or something that they don't know about, but yes, exactly. And just speaking to this software real quick, I live in another
Wait,
municipality. They had it, and about 4 years ago, I did a deck, and I think with the advent of COVID, they've just upped their game because it was so basic. It was almost like using a DOS program with the green screen, green letters, and now it's so far superior to what it was just 3-4 years ago. These things just change so fast in the technology.
And I'm almost horrified to ask, there's no standard Connecticut state building permit. Each 169 town has their own. That's
Pretty much, yeah.
cool.
Yeah. Same with the wetlands applications or the planning zoning applications. They're all different.
Okay.
169 fiefdoms.
And we have, there's building permits, electrical permits, mechanical permits, plumbing permits, so.
This is like 7 permits just under building. Questions?
You want more, Steve?
No. I'm here for another 4 pages.
We don't want to be here for that long. Oh.
I have some questions. John, if we didn't have the ARP money, would this 73,000 be coming out of our contingency fund, and is that still an option if so?
Yes, that's an option to do that. As I was saying, we're looking to try to move the installation and setup quicker, and then we wouldn't have to pay for the software until it's up and running, right, Steve? The monthly, yearly
Yeah,
rate?
well, we wouldn't pay till next budget cycle.
So probably looking at the 55,000
They-
initially, that we
So-
would say come out of
Yeah,
contingency.
they'll work with us so we could pay it in 2 budget cycles, but they'd like it within a 6-month time period.
We probably wouldn't pay the new fee for the 19 until we go live, right? We pay for the
I
old
would hope
software.
not, no.
and then-
I'd have to check with the contract that he sent was 10 pages. I gotta read through that and see how that was structured.
And then, I don't know how much the departments work with our IT department. Maybe that's a question for John, but John, do we consult with John Nowakowski to see if he's aware of vendors who we may currently use that
He was
might
involved.
have this?
He was involved in the interviews with the vendors.
Yeah, I think the department would look for the vendors because it's specific to their operations. And then John would come in as far as seeing what it would take to add this system onto our network, so on. So John is involved more in the installation, compatibility, and then Mike and Steve are more looking to make sure it satisfies the building department's operation needs. So it's sort of a teamwork.
Gotcha.
We did have Zoom interviews, and John Nowakowski was there, present, asking, his technical questions.
Then you had mentioned, Steve, something about CROG, and I thought you had said there would have been a higher price associated. I may have written that down wrong.
So this is a CROG put out the bid. So this is, and they selected 2 vendors we could choose from. We selected vendor A, not vendor B. As I said, vendor A was the preferred choice, like 65% of the time for the 40 municipalities.
Okay, and then my last question is, I guess, to John Mayer. Because we don't obviously want our other systems to fall apart, and that's not suggesting that your system is necessarily falling apart, but so that our other departments don't find themselves in this situation, is it something that we should look into doing an audit? Does John Nowakowski do an audit of the IT systems to make sure we don't find ourselves in this kind of situation where, there is new technology and we could be taking advantage of, better pricing or better
I don't think he
timeline?
does an audit per se. He probably just makes sure that the software that it runs on will be able to run on the software in our town. But I think he would look for notification from the department saying there's something wrong with the system. Hopefully, it's not wrong with the town system, it's something wrong with the vendor system. And in this case, we're starting to see a vendor that was adequate to the town for years and years, providing the service that were needed, then all of a sudden it dropped off quickly, and we're trying to make the move now. So again, I think it's a give and take where the department, we've got to give John Nowakowski's group a heads up for them to go look at it, but I don't think we do an audit per se. But
So how many other departments do we currently have that are using that same vendor?
well, we know it's being used in the assessor's office.
Town clerk links to it. They put in their deficient taxes because somebody can't get a permit, a building permit, if their taxes aren't paid. And that's been a bugaboo too, getting that updated.
I think it's
Sometimes
primarily
not
the
talking.
assessor's department, and their system's working fine. And if he needs to, he can switch over, and it'd be a lot less burdensome and more transparent than this type of system. So there's probably other departments that may have a viewing of the system that's currently being in use, but I think that the tax department does use link up to the building department's
They do.
numbers for.
They're sending an interface, so they're not really
Yes.
a user. They're sending
Right, it's an
information
interface.
to you.
And with the new program, it's supposedly seamless.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm just going to put John Malero on the spot. John Malero, the IT expert, consultant, strategist, and our risk assessment kind of guy. Is there anything that you want to ask? And you may not have anything to ask, but before I wrap up.
I do. You kind of beat me to the punch, actually. I was going to ask a question based on, have we utilized a search consult, or there's teams, there's businesses out there that help us find software or applications throughout the world. I was curious to know if that's something that was entertained or leveraged.
Not
For
in this.
example, there's a company called Software Advice that's just one example, but just curious.
I think what you're
Not in this case.
asking is more of the local CROG, capital region of governments in the Hartford area that supports 50 towns. So it's probably more from a local look at, so that it's being used by a number of towns in a concentrated area, so that we'd probably get better support in the long run. But I don't think it would be something that would be national or worldwide.
Yeah, well, we do. We leverage CROG and the DAS websites for bids because they're put out throughout the state, and they have a little more reach than we would, and it's a cost saving, so we don't have to engage a consultant. So CROG put out the bid, and they they selected these two as their best two for price and service. And it's a nationwide company.
What was the outreach of the bid? How far did it go? Was it a regional? Did you say it was regional or local?
No, this is nationwide. This company's out of California.
Okay.
Okay, great, thank you. Why don't we move on to engineering, pages 62 and 63?
All right, on the right page. All right, so as I said, Jim is retired, and I've assumed his role, so you'll see the salaries actually went down because the gentleman who assumed my role is lower than I was lower than Jim, so salaries have gone down. And just one thing I noted here, motor fuel and lubricants, that's an error. As far as I know, I don't have any in the engineering department. Photocopier has been added to the departments, each department, so that and the telephone, as I noted earlier, are gonna go up. And then the big item, as everybody's been talking about, is supplies. You'll see the fees and markings. That's our pavement markings. And during COVID, we didn't do as many pavement markings because people weren't driving as much. We didn't do any parking lots unless they were brand new. So you'll notice a lot of the parking lots are getting faded. And since 3 years ago, or 2 years ago when we last met, this is basically doubled in price. So it's real price is going to be roughly $73,000. Again, we utilize the CROG bid. There's 3 vendors. We use the lowest responsible bidder. It's Atlantic Pavement Marking. We've been using them for 22 years that I've been here. Good service, and it's just that's the price. So we can eliminate roads, we can eliminate parking lots, or we can do it all. That's the big nut there.
On that fees and marking, do you have the manpower to do all those things in 1 year?
We don't do it in-house. We have to go out on the
it's
fees
all
and marking. Yeah, we don't own that equipment. That would be nice if we could at least share. That's next group. We'll talk.
For clarification, the 8,000 does stay there. That'd be anything within your realm of your departments, from planning, building,
Motor oil and
engineering, wetlands.
Motor oils and lubricants?
Fuel for your vehicles.
Oh, is that what that is?
Yes, it is.
We're doing that now?
Yes, that got decentralized along with your telephones.
I didn't know that.
Yes.
Oh, so that's a new one. Okay.
So it's the pool cars?
So I guess that's the gas for the
Right.
pool
Yeah,
cars.
pool
I
cars
apologize.
now.
I knew
Yes.
about the telephone and the copiers. I did not know that
So
one.
now you got
Yes.
pool cars.
Yeah, pool cars.
And just to the fees and for the markings, do we? A lot of this is related to the supply chain. We keep hearing that. I don't know how long we anticipate that will last. But is it something where if we, and I don't know if you're time bound to do this within the summer or what have you, but is it something where if we waited, we could get more towards the standard fee, or if we push it a year?
No, the price has been going up year after year for the last, 4 or 5 years anyways. And then COVID hit and through the roof. Yeah. I mean, we had cut back a little, and they had been going up leading up to this, but this is double the price of what it was 2-3 years ago.
And if we put it off a year, how often does it need to be done? Like, can we get by with a year?
We could set up a program where we could do, say, the long lines and parking lots 1 year, and then the stop bars and crosswalks another year. So you could do it every other year. They fade quicker on a new pavement, so you really got to get on a road repaved. When you do it, you got to wait usually 14 days or so, and then you want to hit it the next year because it just sucks it up. It's like on new plaster or something. But other than that, we could let them go every other year. Arrange some kind. We could either do by sections of town or by the different types of painting, because there's by truck and by hand. So the trucks are your center lines and the edge lines.
Because, we certainly don't want it to be a safety issue. Of course, people need to see the lines on the roads. But given that, and I understand it's been going on for time, but given that we saw it double during COVID and we've got all these supply pinches, if maybe it should go down, some amount. I mean, doubling is a lot.
I don't know. I don't know if it'll go down. Like I said, it's been going up. Just the price of paint was going up prior to COVID. And, when I talked to the vendors, they didn't really have a reason, but the price of paint was going up.
Right.
So
Yeah,
now it's also your labor costs have gone up and the price of paint has gone up.
Sure.
So.
Okay. Yeah, so if they think that is where it's going to be, then I guess that changes things versus pushing it off potentially.
I mean, we can, like I said, we can cut it in half and do half the town one year, half town the other year. That's an option.
Thanks.
Okay, I think we're good. Thank you
All
to
right, thank
your
you.
whole department. We'll move on to subsection H, Public Works, number 1, Town Garage, pages 58 and 59.
So I'm going to stay right here as the Director of Public Works and bring in Joe Lentini. And like Craig said, we have a great crew. We have 4 mechanics for roughly 200 pieces of equipment. Keeps them very busy. We have 10 maintainers and a foreman. And then we have a few guys who do the trash, the sanitation, the pick up bulk waste in the backyards and the such. And the services we get here in this town are second to none. And with the staff we have, it's the work we perform and accomplish is incredible. So thank you to all the guys. One thing I'd like to note, this past year we went out to bid with the town of Newington, and we purchased a new John Deere tractor with lawnmower. It's a boom mower, has 2 different kind of heads for mowing. That's the good news. The bad news is it's probably a year out in production. Purchase order's been in, but it's, they said if we're lucky, October. So again, supply chain and all that. And we'd like to move forward on more of this community type of thing. You asked about the pavement marking, and Newington has pavement marking equipment they use. So maybe that's something in the future we could look at an agreement and use theirs, but then we have to have the staff and the training, and they have to learn to do that. Crack sealing, we have our own crack seal equipment. We could also barter with the other towns and say, train them on our equipment, and they could do their own crack sealing in-house. So there's opportunities out there. So, on to the highway garage. Joe?
How about any questions? And I'd like to thank my crew also, the 10 men and the crew leader for the highway department. Their work is second to none, and I'm very grateful, and I to give them tremendous amount of respect for what they do, because they take care of the roads like they take care of their own property. And the fleet, they do a tremendous job, obviously, with the amount of vehicles that they're working on. Sanitation crew is phenomenal also, including the transfer station guys. I want to great thank yous for all the work that they do.
So, just curious, why is your motor fuel and lubricants going down? Am I reading that right?
Yeah, I'll take that one. As we've decentralized with the telephone and the copiers, we've also decentralized on motor fuel. So where it was all originally charged to the highway garage, now you'll see it for various departments, as in engineering, as we surprised Steve in his budget, the $8,000 for his building and engineering. You'll also see the fuel, that's the portion that goes to fire department, ambulance, police department, and minibus. So that's a reduction there, but the increases will show up is motor fuel in the other departments as well. Overall, I'll say in just fuel in general, we've got an increase because not so much the usage, but because of the price increase. At the time of this budget, I would say at this point, as we watch the prices increase, we probably want to reconsider and make an additional increase before we finalize the budget.
I had a question about tires and tubes. So projected is for 42,000, which is a decent amount above what was adopted the prior for the budget, and then asking again, the projected 42,000, requesting 30. Okay, so is some of the amount that's being used in the current fiscal year could we lessen that 30,000 because so much was done in the current year, or did prices go up, or what's kind of behind?
Well, yeah, prices have definitely gone up, obviously, across the board with all that stuff. But some of the larger pieces of equipment needed tires, or are going to need tires. And that was part of the increase. And I knew that coming in even a couple of years ago. Because there was a time, I think it was 4 years ago, where I only spent a quarter of that budget. I didn't need anything on any of the major stuff. But now, the larger tires.
So this year, Joe, you spend mostly tires for the dump trucks?
For dump trucks and
Payloaders?
and payloaders,
So
right.
those are large specialty tires.
And there's
How many dump
significant
trucks,
amount.
two?
Part of, yes.
Two, and
Yeah.
usually you have two, what do you have to put on, like 6 or 8 tires or per truck?
Yes, 6 and 8.
Yeah. So next year, you're anticipating replacing on other trucks?
Well, I'm anticipating the price is climbing through the roof, and I got a few more trucks that are gonna need complete sets.
Because they were also driven by the oil prices.
Yes.
Like rubber.
Yeah, and I don't, we purchase as we go, because I don't have storage. I can't. The garage.
I don't know if this question is for Joe or for Mona. When the town buys motor fuel, does the town get exemption from federal and state taxes on it?
On diesel, yes, we don't pay the sales tax, and then federal. We pay a small, less tax, something to do with pollution and that. But when we buy unleaded, we still get charged a gross receipts tax of 6 or 7%. So we do pay that tax on unleaded, but we don't pay much tax on diesel.
And is that, you talked about that one tax, but are there other taxes as well that the town is exempt from? Because there's federal taxes as well, federal and state, right? On unleaded.
I don't know what other taxes associated with gas that we're exempt from, but I just know that we get charged some minor taxes that are a few dollars. And I just remember seeing the bill, it's less or something, and so on. So we're pretty much exempt from most of the federal taxes and some of the state taxes on the diesel fuel.
I believe Lust is, you said Lust, right?
Yep.
Yeah, it's leaking underground storage tank, so I think it's a environmental thing.
Okay, that's the one that we pay. Okay,
Yeah.
thanks.
Had a quick
Anything else?
question. Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead, Chris. Go ahead.
I had a quick question about, we've been replacing some of the older equipment that's been, really on the ropes for a long time with newer equipment. Are we seeing any, any savings from that on the maintenance side, as far as, or at least, or having to go out and get parts that are no longer in production? Are we kind of turning the corner there, with some of the turnover that we've done?
Not yet.
Not yet. Is that because that equipment, do we still have that much older inventory in place?
Yep. So the tractor I mentioned for mowing, we're still using a 30-year-old tractor, and what's the other one? About 20?
Yeah.
The other John Deere. So, and we just had to repair that so we get through the summer, and that was thousands of dollars worth of repair, because we just can't walk in and buy something off the shelf right now. We still have a 1986 dump truck that we use pretty much daily in the
Plus the trucks
in the
do
summers.
get beat up pretty good during the winter time.
Yeah.
They go out and do that plowing. Sometimes you get a truck that has something that goes down that's kind of costly, that we need to replace it so that we need it in the fleet.
But the things like the 1986 dump truck, like how close are we to turning the corner and cycling some of those out of the
That's
fleet?
the next one out, actually.
It was
It is
supposed
the
to
next
go
one out.
and end the supply chain issue, and couldn't get the replacement.
Right, but like, it's like the last one, like, do you have a whole garage full of these guys? How close are we to wrapping some of that up and getting more modernized? with our
What's
fleet?
after that? 86?
Well, if you go down and take a
1,000?
look at it, as Joe and Steve mentioned, our mechanics do keep those trucks looking in good shape and so on. So I think if you went down there, you'd have difficulty finding the 1986 truck. But it is getting out because
It'd be the one
it's
with the
what's
Van Halen
underneath
bumper sticker.
that's starting to go, and we are replacing it with the truck that was approved a couple meetings ago. And I think that should get us into the 2000s, Joe?
Yes.
Yeah.
So we don't have anything older than that.
That's correct.
Chris, I'm thinking it might be Aerosmith to match with Central Connecticut Health District. The flyer.
That's right, Charlie's flyer.
Sold one to Sterling?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll leave it.
Did you have another question, Chris? Because I had one.
Yeah, I just had one, and it's, there's a new bill that I think is being passed that to encourage the adoption of EVs. It's not, we're not going to have electric dump trucks, but if we started to think about what it would look like to have some of the light duty vehicles like the ones that we lease out now, the Ford, the Ford Focuses or Ford Fusions, and change those out with, I don't know, let's say 2 EVs, just as a hypothetical. What's the impact of that on the highway garage? Would you have to do a lot of retooling? Because we're hearing everybody mention the cost of fuel going up. It seems like if you go back a number of years ago when gas was almost $5 a gallon, it's coming that way again. How hard would it be to transition some of those, again, the light duty vehicles over to that?
It's going to be retooling, like you said. First of all, you're going to have to bring in the chargers. I'm actually going to be on a webinar next week, I think, about this. So there's the infrastructure for charging and such. There's going to be a retooling, retraining of your mechanics for the repairing, because this is totally foreign to them. Yeah, you're going to save in fuel, definitely. The one thing nobody talks about with these is when the battery goes, it's a huge expense to replace a battery when you can't recharge it anymore. That's one thing that kind of gets lost in that, but you are saving over the years. And the economy, too.
And disposal of that battery,
ecology.
too.
Yeah, and the disposal of the battery, so.
But to that point, I wonder.
And the life is expensive on it.
Well, to that point, for some of those light duty vehicles, we lease them, right? And I guess then we could determine if we wanted to buy them out or keep leasing them.
Most we lease to own, right?
Yes.
Because I think potentially we consider that, because I agree the whole battery replacement storage thing is a little challenging, but potentially we could just look at leasing a new fleet and just fixing our cost.
And right now, we buy a lot of Fords, and Ford has a new little pickup truck out there that starts around 20 grand. That's pretty inexpensive compared to everything else. Even a Civic is like 30 now. Front wheel drive, electric, zip around, perfect. Four-door too.
Thanks.
That's not out
Now, along those lines, Joe, I went to a conference that CVIA held, and they were talking about, all the electric vehicles and the need for infrastructure, like Councilor Duff mentioned, and also that the state of Connecticut really isn't set up yet to roll out this massive electric vehicle program, or else you would crash our grid. That's not to say we shouldn't consider adding a couple of electric vehicles, in the very near future. But one thing that they talked about that I was not aware of is the use of fueling these vehicles with propane in lieu of regular gas. And is that something that we could transition to sooner?
We actually had a natural gas fleet that did not work out well at all.
But what about propane?
I don't know anything about that.
I don't know anything about propane, but we did have a natural
You
gas.
have to do something to the engine to
Yes.
accept it? You can't just...
I don't know, I haven't heard anything about that.
I don't think it's interchangeable.
You have to put like a certain box in it or something.
Yeah, that's something we'd have to look at. I know that natural gas fleet we had was here and gone. It did not work out.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? All right, why don't we move on then to road maintenance, pages 60 and 61.
So these are the 10 maintainers?
These are our 10 maintainers and
that,
foremen.
Plow the roads and do the catch basin as well as paving, Joe?
Do the daily
Snow
work.
removal,
You name it.
all the road maintenance. This is the 10-man crew leader.
So Joe, maybe discuss the thoughts on salt.
Oh,
That's sort of,
well, salt.
is it price increasing, supply concerns?
where you can get it?
So I've been trying to reach out, what like a future cost would be. And all I keep on hearing is it's gonna come up. But just recently I put in my amount for tonnages through the CROG to see. So it'll be a few months before I see that pricing. I have no idea, but I hear it's going up significantly due to
So
everything
that's
that's
just
happening.
anticipating using same amounts as you've had in the past few years, but at a different per ton cost.
I mean, if you look at the last 5 years with the snow events we've had, we've been pretty consistent, where it's been 20 to 30 events. I mean, this year was a little bit different. We didn't have the accumulation, but we did have a lot of ice and sleet. And we were out there, like the Parks Director said, we were out there a lot longer, even though we didn't have the accumulation. But yeah, and then I'm using a significant amount, especially with ice, of the treated salt. But I anticipate, I don't know, it's tough to forecast that, but that tonnage. But I would definitely anticipate a cost increase across the board with salt.
And once again, we leveraged the CROG bid, and it just came out this week asking for your tonnage. And they bid for all 42 towns, or what, I think they're up to 42 now. So they put out the bid, that bulk. So the 42 towns put in their estimated tonnages, and they go to bid. And last year, was it last year with the issue with the terminal down in New Haven?
Right.
So that was also an issue, as they were shutting off shipments except for their own people. So we had to go where? Like, we go to a different terminal, right?
It's a concern about supply.
Yeah.
That could
It was
affect.
it was a concern about supply.
Yeah. So,
They have to go hunting.
like the
Yeah.
Providence, not just down in New Haven.
I had a
So to clarify, your new number reflects estimated costs, even though it's difficult to determine what that number actually looks like?
That's correct.
That's right.
Right, the bid just came out, so they
Okay.
haven't even compiled them yet. Yeah, it's not due for a little bit, so we won't know for another month or two.
All right,
The
thank you.
request for numbers.
Yeah.
For the bid. and then
Yeah,
they're
they just
going-
came out.
I had a couple questions on the street lighting. Some of this is for maintenance, I guess. What are these versus the ones that Phil Sear was talking about in facilities?
All right, so these are the regular, the ones he was talking about are the decorative black lamp posts with the flags, and they put the decorative
Celestine.
stars and all that stuff on it
Yeah.
at different times of year. On Celestine, yeah, these are your everyday street lights on the utility poles out in everybody's neighborhoods.
Gotcha, okay.
Yep.
And where's the line between what Eversource provides, whether it's electricity or maintenance, versus what we have to do? Does Eversource, is it all up to the
Eversource
towns to
takes
do?
care of it.
So, yeah, we
All the
pay
streetlights
Eversource.
that Steve's talking about, Eversource takes care of. And they take care of the poles too.
They do the maintenance on them, so if somebody
So
hits a
the-
pole,
yeah, so
So when we see this $250,000 figure for street lighting, what is that then covering if Eversource is?
cost of the electricity.
Just electricity, kilowatt.
we pay
But
them.
they
And we don't use our
will-
solar farm for any of that?
Yes, we do. Yeah. That's offset by the
250
credits.
Oh, there's an offsetting on the revenue side, okay, gotcha. That's what I was missing.
Yeah, well, the credit is actually within that price. So we actually get a bill, get charged by the credit on the Eversource, and then you get billed from
Just like
the
that,
solar.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then, of course, today, I think it was that we got an email from them saying they're going to Pura for a rate increase. So, because they lost
Standard
money
offer.
last year.
And others.
Yeah.
But I think we're locked in, right, Mona?
Correct.
So we locked in
Yeah,
so it doesn't really affect us that greatly.
right. And then
As
it
long
was
as it's
2%, it
locked
wasn't, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it will not affect this.
Great, thank you.
So things like line 5613, uniforms and cleaning, can the cleaning in all of these departments, or at least much of it, be broken out for ARPA money? Is there an increase, I should ask probably first, in cleaning because of COVID? Or is it hard to tell?
I
think
think
a
they
lot
have uniforms for like the
Yeah.
guys that work in the garage, the
Yeah.
mechanics.
Yeah, that uniform cost is for all the clothing that they're wearing.
Right.
Yeah.
It's more clothing allowance than cleaning.
Dry cleaning, right.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
a dry cleaning of the
And
uniforms.
it does get sent
Gotcha.
out to a cleaning service, some of them.
No,
No.
we eliminated that, so I've been
Yeah.
purchasing the
Washing them
shirts.
yourself, Joe?
Yeah, I'm not
Yeah.
washing them. I do have a washer down there, but it's not set up.
Carpets and stuff right down there, and that comes out.
Right through the ringer.
Yeah. It's more the definition of the accounts as uniforms and cleaning, so it's just kind of more interactive through each budget. But in this case, it's uniform allowance.
Yeah, if you look at the facilities guys, they'll have T-shirts and say facilities. Our guys have, highways or whatever.
Okay. All right, should we move on to sanitation?
Yes, please.
Pages 64 and 65?
This is, all materials and supplies. I mean, do you want me to talk about anything? I mean, this is where we have the two guys that pick up the bulky waste plus the transfer station guys. This is that part of the budget for sanitation.
No problem.
Including the solid waste, disposal and the collection.
And the grinding of all the brush we pick up three
Right.
times a year.
So solid waste, we talked about at a prior meeting, right? So we're,
Yeah.
prior town council.
Yes.
Yeah, that was-
We're all-
I think
yes.
we're talked out.
Yeah, we're all good there.
Yeah,
I
that's,
think we can move forward.
so that would be the solid waste disposal.
Right. And the sewer
Solid
service,
waste collection is the guys who pick it up.
and the sewer service charge is what we're charged. We have no control over.
Right.
MDC, right?
Right, so. There's really not much we could do with this, I guess.
No,
No,
you're kind of stuck.
this is, this, turn the page.
Well, we saved $10,000 in the grinding service?
Yeah, because of the IASIS event a couple years ago, if you recall.
Yeah.
So
FEMA.
that material was charged to FEMA.
Gotcha.
But
Or we receive FEMA money, so,
But if you went out, we just did brush pickup, it was supposed to be last week and it stretched into this week because it turned into more than just brush pickup. People are using it as land clearing services. We try to limit it to one truckload, and there's houses that we're picking up 4 or 5 truckloads of brush. So, that's something you folks might want to think about, because we try to let the people know, 1 load each. We're so far behind, we just finished. So, and that'll, up the price on the grinding.
Thanks.
And the materials and supplies, am I reading this right? It's going up? What does that constitute?
the carts, the trash carts,
To
Oh,
replace
the one
blue
we
and
talked
green.
about the last time?
yeah, to replace,
Yeah.
yeah, that's why we,
Yeah.
yeah, so that costs, obviously that costs just like everything else
Right.
is
So
going through
we
the
sort of
roof.
established that line so that Joe could replace the broken carts over the years, so that we don't get hit with a big charge.
Plus, to operate the transfer station correctly, those dumpsters are supposed to be covered. So if it rains or whatever, you don't have the pollutants washing out, so that's other things we have to do. Those don't last forever either, those covers.
Okay. Thanks.
Okay, great, thank you. I think we probably have no more questions.
Should we
so
call
thank
in
you
the
for your
police
comments.
now?
Can you
Yes,
top
we're
that
calling
in
the
time?
Please.
911.
All right.
So we will begin with administration on pages 38 and 39.
Good evening. I am Police Chief Michael Custer, Rocky Hill Police. With me tonight, I have my command staff, Lieutenant Brian Klett, who is my Administrative Division Commander, Also here is Lieutenant Joseph Phelps, who is the Patrol Division Commander, and Lieutenant Eric Gutsfeld, who is my Detective Division Commander. So the three of them work very closely with me in formulating our budget, and they would be happy to answer any questions you may have as well. So basically, when we put this together, obviously we're trying to keep the proposed budget as flat as possible, and I think we did a pretty good job for the most part doing that with the budget you had before you. However, there were some uncontrollable slight increases, contractual based, obviously, that we couldn't do much with. And basically, it comes down to 4 items, I think, that you see in this budget that stands out from last year. And I'll just mention them briefly, and certainly we can talk some more about them if you'd like. First and foremost would be the upgrade to a full-time animal control officer. Presently, we have budgeting for a part-timer, so there are already monies in place right now towards that salary, if in fact it's approved and we go forward with it. And that's something that we feel is long overdue and we'd like to see. There's also an increase in the contractual service line of $26,000 that was not there last year. And that is basically our maintenance contract for all the body cams and vehicle cams now that we have and we are mandated to have by the state of Connecticut. So that's a new cost. When we get to the radio service section, you'll see an increase, $57,000 in the radio service line. We'll be happy to talk some more about that, but that's basically, we have a system now that's coming up on 7 years, and we need to beef up the maintenance contract because we're starting to find parts are going, and more importantly, some of the hardware is not compatible with the new software upgrades. So we're suggesting an increase in that line. And then last but not least is some nominal increases in training lines across the pages. And that's basically a combination of an increase in pricing for training for our people and mandates, again, in new areas that we didn't have in the past, such as fair and impartial policing, de-escalation, et cetera. So there are some slight increases in those training lines as well. Other than that, I'd be happy to start off with any questions that we have on the administration page.
Chief, thanks for coming in. On the animal control, can you just give an idea as to what the current coverage is now, what you're looking for it to become, and kind of the volume that dictates wanting the change? Just put some color around all that.
Absolutely, and actually I'll give you a little history on this position. So when I first came on scene here in Rocky Hill in 2003, we had a full-time animal control officer. So this is a position we had and we lost. Individual who held that position worked for the town for 30 years, and he retired in 2004. We have not had a full-time animal control officer since 2004. So we've been using basically a part-timer who comes in after hours. He works full-time, his own job, comes in after hours to pick up any calls that come in during the day. Any emergent situations would be handled by the police, but most of them are routine animal control complaints. He'll pick those up when he can come in after hours and on weekends. It's not a very effective service delivery. We were fortunate enough in 2016 to get a very qualified applicant who was a part-time animal control officer in Old Saybrook and wanted to come on board here, and we were able to manage 20 hours a week for her. So we had a pretty good system. We had her for 20 hours during the week. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't 40 hours. Then we had the other gentleman for weekends. Well, unfortunately, she left us and took on another job in 2021. We have posted for the position numerous times. The applicant pool that we have received is terrible. And it's limited and it's terrible. And I suspect the problem is it's not a full-time position, which I think will attract good candidates and qualified candidates. And I think that's what we need to do. The fact that a town of 21,000 plus, we do not have a full-time animal control officer is insane. But to answer your question, I'll give you some numbers. So we started tracking the animal control calls starting in 2016 when we had 345. 2017, 406. 2018, 426. 2019, 568. So you could see it's just been a continual increase in these calls. And calls for service would be those that come in from citizens and then any incidents generated by the animal control officer. Dog park is a very busy place. I mean, we could literally have somebody there full-time. We get so many complaints and issues, especially during the warm months. So having a full-time animal control officer during the week coupled with this part-timer who would be able to handle after hours and weekends, I think would be an excellent delivery model for the town. And like I said, some of the money is there already because we have salary money for the 20 hours for that individual. So we would be just looking for the additional monies. Animal control officer, ironically, is a union position. So there's a set salary, which would be starting at $53,000 a year.
So the negative number reflects the female that left that was doing 20 hours.
Yeah, we took her monies and we rolled it into the full-time proposal.
And if you had a full-time person, you would still use that other half-time person that works nights and weekends?
Yes, we would. There's a need, trust me. There's definitely a need to have that after hours and weekend coverage.
So, Chief, can you describe for us, kind of the examples of the kind of situations that animal control is called upon to deal with?
So it can range anywhere from dog bites, animal bites. We get a lot of stray, rabid animal calls, a lot of wildlife in addition to the domestic animals, and they're going out on those, and it's not just a job where you're just responding to, animal complaints. There's a knowledge base that's required for this job. There's mandated reporting that has to be made to the state, and the training now is getting quite technical. And years ago, there was no training. So these individuals, or the one we have now, has to go through annual training to keep their animal control certificate. So it's become a little bit more involved and sophisticated over the years.
Okay. So when this person, for example, takes custody of a dog who has committed a serious dog bite or something, then there's, I assume, procedures, what to do to take custody, what they need, a place to take the dog to. I assume there's paperwork. There's
all of that. If the dog has a license, it's fairly easy. We can track the owner. What we'll do is hold the animal for up to 24 hours in the station, so as not to impose costs on the owner by putting them in the pound. But after that, they do go to the pound. A lot of times they don't have a dog tag on them, so we have to bring them to the pound. The other nice thing about having a full-time position is we could get a little proactive with this. So as the town clerk had stated earlier, you're seeing a lot of registrations coming in. There's a lot of pets in the town, but we don't know exactly how many. And so, for example, if somebody registers their dog one year, but they don't register the following year, well, what happened? Did the dog pass away, for instance? Did they give the dog away? There's nobody tracking that. That would be one of the responsibilities we could utilize the animal control officer for if we had a full-time person. So there's a number of benefits to it.
Chief, do you have any data with respect to your animal calls on how many actual emergencies, and I don't know how you might define that, let's just say an animal bite, versus there's a stray dog in my backyard?
I don't have that data offhand. I think if we dug deep, we might be able to find it. But, you know, obviously, if it's happening during the day now with the absence of this 20-hour employee, a police officer would be handling an emergent situation. Not maybe the best utilization of you know, trained police officer, but it's what we have to do right now. And then anything after hours would be the part-timer coming in. But we could check that data, and hopefully we can get a number for you.
And then with respect to the complaints at the dog park, at some point, does that become a park and rec issue? I mean, what are those complaints? Is it some, you know, I have not been in years, but I mean, I know that there are people, like literally people who like say your dog isn't licensed, or, you know, you don't have the right color tag on. And is animal control responding to that, or are they actual emergencies?
Both. So when we had the 20-hour employee, she was spending a lot of time up there checking for dog licenses, and we get a lot of calls up there involving aggressive dogs. You know, the larger dogs going after the smaller dogs, upsetting the owners. We've had some incidents where there have been bites. So it's been all of that, and it's a very busy park because it's a beautiful park. It's one of the best in central Connecticut, so it attracts a lot of people, and we do get a lot of out-of-towners. So having a presence up there, and we've worked with Craig on it, and you know we've dialed down on a lot of the issues, but it requires pretty much constant attention during the warm weather months.
But I'm wondering, you know, to your point then, is this something that, you know, someone from Parks and Rec or someone, you know, in a summerscape program could go and monitor the dog parks, especially in the warmer weather?
Well, I would suggest any assistance from Park and Rec would be very helpful for us, especially with the situation we're in right now with animal control.
And then finally, is this a position that maybe could be regionalized, particularly when you're looking at, you know, the nighttime work? You know, is it something we might want to look to collaborate with Weathersfield or Newington or Cromwell?
In terms of coverage?
In terms of, you know, sharing an officer?
We have not had those discussions. Again, you know, the part-timer we have is fairly reliable. He's been with us for a number of years, but there are occasions when he just simply can't respond, and generally we'll have the police again handle that situation. But I guess that's a discussion we could have. We haven't had it.
Okay, thank you. I have nothing further.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Did you have something, Councilor Thoreau?
Yeah, just, do you know, do other towns in the area around the same size as Rocky Hill have a full-time animal control officer?
They do.
I think the challenge, and it makes sense, especially the part about making sure that you're sending, you know, that you're not sending an officer, like a patrol person, to go to the dog park to mediate a dispute. That makes a lot of sense, and the call volume is going up. I think the challenge on our side is that for almost 20 years we've gotten by with the part-time, and our budget is getting squished from a lot of areas. So, you know, I think the mayor's thought was one worth exploring, if it was a shared resource, if you know, if it was something where, and I don't know how it would work, if we could, we had the full-time person, because I also completely understand, especially in the job market now, it's probably hard to get someone who's qualified and checks all the boxes and wants to work part-time. That's tough.
Right.
And probably that person wouldn't be around for a while because they would find something else. So with all that being said, I'd be interested to see if there's a way where either we could potentially fund hours from somebody else coming in from a neighboring town, or, you know, if we had them as part of our department, if that person could go do calls to within some sort of area, and then kick back some hours to us. I don't know if that type of model exists, but it might be a way of getting a full-time person there who's qualified and will be around for a while, but also, you know, helping us a little bit with the cost as well, because we just need to get as creative as possible, you know, these days.
Okay. Why don't we move on to records and communications, pages 40 and 41.
And on this page, under, again, contractual services, you're going to see an increase pretty much attributed to that maintenance contract now that we have for the body cams and in-car camera systems. Otherwise, everything else there pretty much is the same.
Radio.
I don't think that's, oh, and then,
Yes.
you're right, John. And then the other item is the radio service that I mentioned, $57,000 increase. And Lieutenant Phelps is very, very involved with that project. So, Joe, could you just explain the significance of the additional funding in terms of coverage, how the system works?
We're now hitting the point where our maintenance contract is going from a software base to the possibility of any update that occurs, the hardware that's associated with it could have to be upgraded, or if there is some sort of failure and a barrage of switches or whatever has to be repaired, it may not be compatible. So we're at that point now where Motorola wants to up the cost for the software and the hardware upgrades. We're in the process of going through a software upgrade in the next, I think it's actually next week. So as we keep upgrading, the hardware starts to fall off, and if we don't keep up with that, then we're in some problems. To make note of it, this radio system isn't just for the police department. This is the townwide system. This is police, fire, EMS, highway, and the town emergency. So it's not just encompassing the PD.
It's all town departments, and it's not just the dispatch center. It's also the infrastructure around town. So the antennas, receivers, transmitters. So it's the whole ball of wax.
And this isn't just the police department's allocation of the cost, it's the cost that covers all these other areas.
That's correct.
There's multiple sites where that we transmit and receive off of.
So it's centralized with the police. And Joe, you purchase equipment for the other departments as well, so that we have a standardized operation system.
For the infrastructure we do, everyone else is purchasing their own portables and mobile radios, so that comes out of their own budget. But
Including the schools.
yeah, they handle their own. We maintain the actual infrastructure.
So that contracts for the software and the hard infrastructure too.
Correct.
And is there anything with that, we're increasing our cooperation with regional task forces. Is there anything that we would need to align to make sure that we're all using the same technology, or does it just kind of natively work together?
For the equipment?
Yeah.
So we operate on our own. Our system is our own system. We are tied to the state. If we ever want to integrate in the future, they're going to require you to keep up with technology. This would keep us there. Again, we operate our own system, our own network, and we do have an MOU with the state with their regional assets for the radio. But
So when we're doing things like that regional anti-car theft cooperation that our task force that was worked on, you need to communicate with someone in the Wethersfield car, like that all works together, or
no,
not as much as we'd like.
Not necessarily.
No, not always.
But we do have regional capability. There's a regional channel. We have a hotline that all agencies are tied into. But it's kind of like the building department deal.
Everybody's doing their own thing.
Yeah, and you're all grabbing for the best deals and pricing. And so, one guy's got Motorola, somebody else has got Kenwood, and different frequencies.
We have made ourselves, we've given everybody else interoperability within our network, so we're probably a little bit better off than most around us.
Thanks.
So how old is this hardware? Like which year?
I think we signed off on the actual install in 2016 was the So
Like
we're
6.5 years.
So we're 6
6.5
years
years.
for some components. Some have been a little bit older.
Yeah, so it has to go together now if you keep on like updating the software. That's what you're saying.
Yeah, it's like doing your Windows updates, and now your computer isn't
Right.
able to take them anymore.
Is that like now a typical cycle, like a 6-year cycle, or like I don't know, like for our phones is like 18 months. I mean, you don't have to buy it, but they come out with one every 18 months.
I think our last system was about 20 years old.
Yeah, I would say about 18, 20 years max with a system.
Wow.
If you stay up on it.
Yeah.
But it depends on when, it's like an iPhone, when they decide they don't want to make it anymore, then
Yeah, 50% is pretty. Hopefully, this stays like for another 6 years.
I will say
50% is a pretty big jump, I think.
Motorola is expensive, and they do continue to go up. And again, you have the option to self-insure it, and you take that. If you don't want to do that, then we can cross our fingers and hope.
Right. I see what you're saying.
And when you don't have that contract, they're still going to come out. There's still going to be coverage, obviously. It's public safety. But boy, you're going to pay
Right.
for those service calls, especially if they're after hours. So, something to keep in mind.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
And all this equipment is updated for the E911, they're compliant and
Separate systems.
separate systems?
Yeah, that's-
But is it included in this budget, or?
E911 is, I believe, done through the state.
Through the state of Connecticut, yeah.
Okay.
So they maintain that for us
Okay.
as a PSAP.
Yeah,
Okay.
but your stuff is all compatible with,
Yes, yes.
Just real quick on the full-time salaries, is that just contractual increases?
Yeah, so on,
Yes, you got 10.
Reflects 2 years.
10 dispatchers, as well as 2 book
Yep.
record keepers.
But you're right, John. So on the full-time salaries on each page, there's 2 things going on there. So police union is in active negotiations with the town. So that we know that we're anticipating some pay increase. So I factored in approximately 3%. I figured that was safe. But did you do the 2
For 2
years
years.
also? Because they've been almost a year without a contract, so.
Oh, so we get retroactive?
Yeah. So we tried to factor in a cushion for the 2-year impact.
So that would be about 6%, so this is almost 9%. Is there something else going on?
You'll also have mobility, whether it be step increases as they go, if they're entry level, and they can move up steps as well.
Thanks.
Chief, is this CALIA membership audit and site visit fees an annual fee?
Yes. Yes.
Wow.
Yes.
And I don't see anything in here for post, so is post free?
Host is free, yes.
Okay. Anything else? All right, why don't we move on to investigations, pages 42 and 43?
It's probably our simplest, easiest page, and very little change. I think it was just on the overtime line, and we are asking for an increase there, and that's basically, we're running a little high on that line since we've joined up with the Hartford Regional Auto Theft Task Force. So we have 2 detectives going out generally one night, one day a week with the task force. So depending if they had to come in and work that day to work on local cases and then they went up there afterwards, that would be overtime. Also, we've seen an uptick in activity with the drug officer who's embedded with the DEA, working some major fentanyl cases. So his overtime is coming a little higher than it has the last year or 2. And was there anything else driving that? Yeah, and then that 3%, which I also factored in there. But we've already gone over the 50,000 this year on the overtime line on this page. So 60,000 is probably a more accurate number.
Yeah, I'd say in fact you've already exceeded your projection
Right.
as things are going on, so they're probably at about 63,000 now.
Otherwise, everything should be the same.
So once all of your new officers, and I don't know if they're all onboarded at this point, are in patrol, do you think that that overtime is going to go down? Or are you saying the overtime is really related to DEA and the
So we can
that's task
so we can
force?
move out of investigations, go to patrol. We're all set.
Right, because DEA, the Auto Theft Task Force is just relevant to this page. So your question would be on the next page in patrol, if you want to go to that.
And does anyone have any questions on investigations? Okay, let's go to that, Chief.
Okay, so.
We just 44 and 45.
Right. So in terms of the patrol overtime, we are now fully staffed. Our last hire just took place 2 weeks ago. That officer is in his field training. We anticipate that probably within 2 to 3 weeks he'll be out on the road. And then you'll start incurring the full benefits of full staffing. But with that said, so I'll be honest with you, what I'm really hoping for here is not so much a decrease in the overtime line, is just preventing an increase. And the reason why I don't believe we will see a decrease is with that additional officers that we gained, we've increased our staffing levels, mandatory staffing levels. We're basically running 3 cars each shift, and we've been doing that for a number of years. And it's just simply not enough, especially with the increase in calls for service and number of incidents happening. So you may recall that when we had that discussion about increasing the number of officers, one of the forces behind that was to increase our mandatory staffing to 4 cars. We have since done that, and it's been implemented. And it's resulted in a number of benefits. In addition to the additional officer on the street, we've been able to get proactive and do things we haven't been able to do for years. For instance, I reported in public safety last meeting that we've formed a community response unit within the patrol division to handle, particular problem areas, hotspots, crime trends, etc. Recently, we just launched a one-day task force initiative with outstanding warrants for individuals and actually going out and tracking them down and bringing them in. We haven't been able to do that. So those have been the benefits of it. But to circle back to your question, so I'm just, I'm hopeful and I'm confident that the number probably won't go down because of those initiatives, but it shouldn't go up much either. So I hope that answers your question.
No, I think it does. So I think what you're saying is that you're doing the things that you need to be doing that you have not up until this point been able to do, and therefore we won't see the reduction in the overtime, correct?
I think that's a fair statement, yes.
Okay.
Although it does look like we'll get a reduction in what that actual turns out to be, right? Because it looks like in 2020 to 2021, it was 447. We're projecting towards 410 this year, and if we go on projection with everybody at full staff, it's 352. So we would be, as long as we stay in that ballpark, we are realizing some savings there.
Correct.
I have a question for John. So John, like when we look at the motor fuel and lubricants 127,800, do we have one person who orders all of this, or is it the departments who do it separately? Because, well, let me just stop. That's my question.
Well, the highway department orders it, and it's all stored at the tanks at the highway garage. And the police department uses unleaded gas primarily. I don't think you have any diesel vehicles.
No.
So it's ordered by the highway department, and those tanks other departments fill up at as well. And they do have keys, fobs, and that allows the system to track gas usage by the various vehicles based on those fobs. So, but it
And
is
then that's
centrally
how you
purchased.
allocate.
Centrally purchased by the highway department.
Yeah.
And then, Mona, that's how you allocate like this particular figure to this particular department.
Right, so
Based on that
right, so
feedback.
decentralized, we looked at 1 year's usage based on the fob system and came up with their usage and then applied our best guesstimate at the time of what the rate would be per gallon, although, like I was saying before, we might want to adjust that, and that'd be the amount for that department.
Are there any questions on this page?
Yeah, Chief, the training, is that training related to any new mandates, or is it related to something which we already do and just the costs have gone up?
Combination of the cost increases and training mandates. And we've already, I think as of today, we've already gone over that with 2 months to go, so we need to bump that one up a little bit.
And then what is a CREST team?
So the CREST is one of our mid-state teams, and in this case, CREST stands for Capital Region Emergency Service Team. It's a SWAT team. So obviously, we're not big enough to fund our own SWAT unit, so we participate with the regional team, which is CREST. And the other regional team that we participate in is the Mid-State Auto Reconstruction Team. We also have a major crime unit out of the Mid-State, and then we've already mentioned the Auto Theft Task Force and DEA.
All right, any other questions? Well, thank you to you and your department.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Motion to adjourn?
Looks like, yeah.
Second?
Do you have a second? Is there a
I
second?
I have a second.
Mimi got the second.
Oh, Mimi, sorry, Mimi.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, good night, everyone, thank you.
She can't see me waving.